Okay. Welcome everybody to the second day of the RTM budget hearings. Today is May 14th, 2020. Can we first have a roll call? The town clerk.
Steve Chesery. Mike Mahoney.
Here.
Veronica Monahan. Amy O'Shea. Bill Gerber.
Here.
Karen McCormick.
Here.
Cindy Perham. Jeff Steele.
Here.
Alex Durrell.
Here.
Matt Jacobs.
Here.
Scott Nickel.
Here.
Sharon Pastilli.
Here.
Laura Carson. She's on. Ellis Kelly.
She's here, yeah.
Meredith Odenak.
Here.
Marcy Spolier. Josh Garskoff.
Here.
Julie Gottlieb.
Here.
Joe Siebert.
Here.
Jay Wolk.
Here.
Matt Ambrose. Hannah Gale. Lisa Havey.
Yep, right here.
Risha Paul Dunmore. Lauren Bove.
I'm here.
Mark McDermott.
I am here.
Jill Vergara.
Here. Thank you.
Karen Wackerman.
Here.
Hank Ferentz.
I'm here.
Pam Iacono.
Here.
Christine Messina.
Here.
Pete Tallman.
Here.
Drew Georgiadis. Rick Brower.
Here.
Chrissy Kelly.
Here.
Bill Perugini.
Here.
Janine Alianello.
Here. Thank you.
Elizabeth Altabelli.
Here.
Frank Patisse.
I'm here.
Here.
Marissa Ringel.
Here. Thank you, Betsy. Thank you, Betsy. I think tonight we'll skip the pledge because it gets a little chaotic, but we'll get back to that as soon as we can meet. Tonight we're going to start with the assessor's presentation. Mr. Murray, are you here?
I am.
Ah, I see you there. Hello. For everybody, this is, if you could please mute your phones and your computers. And also, just to tell you, this is budget item 3050 on page 151 of the budget book. Thank you. Mr. Murray, do you want to give us a little overview? Oh, I think you're muted. Ah, okay.
Yeah, I'm connected to my phone. I don't think I... Uh-oh, I got feedback here.
The second thing sounded okay. Give it a try.
This is Sharon. I think you have to mute one of them. Yeah, mute one of them.
I'm getting feedback of myself.
Oh, mute either the computer or the phone, I think.
Yeah, my computer is muted.
Oh.
You sound good to us.
Okay, how's that?
Oh. No, we hear the echo. Oh. Oh, my goodness. Move the phone away from the computer is the suggestion from Mr. Kelly. Can you move the phone away from the computer?
Hey,
Are we
Ross,
back?
why don't you just hang up the
Or from-
phone and use the computer? You sound okay on the computer.
Okay,
Let me try it.
okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay, that seems to be working. Much better.
good,
Okay.
good.
So I'll take you through my budget. The first item is under software. That budget item is down just over 31,000, and that is due to a one-time item last year for about that amount to upgrade our Vision camera software. So that was just a one-time item, and that's gone. Under fees and professional services, that line item is 80,000, and it's primarily due to two things. One is an increase in the estimated cost for court appeals due to the revaluation, and the other item is the balance of the revaluation, which added 53,000 to this year's budget. So next year we should see about $175,000 reduction in that item.
Okay,
The next two items, motor vehicle, fuel and lube, and maintenance, are pretty small and unchanged. Communication is a new item for us. We are testing one laptop in the field that has cellular connection, so that when the four of us that go out into the field will have a laptop with us that we can connect remotely to our desktops and be able to access the camera software and look properties up. And it just helps in the field. So if you see something, you can look it up right away and see if you need to, if it's something we don't know about, we can make note of it and pick it up.
Mhm.
So we're testing one right now, and that's for an additional 2. So we're looking to do 3 total. Printing and binding is down a small amount. Office supplies, that was cut by the Board of Finance, so that's now back at the same level as last year. Postage is, I think, unchanged.
No, it looks like it went up.
Yeah,
Postage went up a couple thousand, right? Am I reading that
Oh, yeah,
right? From
we had-
55?
Yeah, let me just see. Yeah, that was up for to do a outreach program for homeowners, for the homeowners benefit program. And we had some additional costs that will wrap up this year associated with the reval, where we were mailing out verification letters on properties that were sold.
Mm-hmm.
So we figure about
Okay.
$1,500 for the homeowners and about $500 for the balance of the sales verifications. And then
Thank you.
education and travel have been reduced, so they're back down to last year's amount.
Okay. Thank you. Are there
We don't have
any?
any revenue to speak of?
Are there any questions for Mr. Murray? Representative Vergara.
Hi, Ross. This is Jill Vergara. I wanted to say how sorry I was to hear that your father had died, and I haven't seen you since it happened. And I've been thinking about you, and that you've been having to work through all this and stuff. And I'm really sorry for yours and your family's loss.
Thank you.
That was it. That's all I wanted to say. I hope you're doing well. Bye.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that. My condolences as well. Are there any other comments or questions? I think not. Okay, well, thank you so much, Mr. Murray. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And we'll move on now to the tax collector. It's item 3090 in the budget book and page 154. Do we have the tax collector on? Yes, I see you. How are you? I think you're on mute. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Fine, thanks. Do you want to just give us a little overview of the budget?
Sure. So the main overview of my budget is any of the biggest increases. Well, the biggest increase is regular payroll, and those are contractual increases, as everyone in my office is part of the union. Mm-hmm. Another increase would be the IT software. That is the software that we use to process payments, so our tax software, and that is, again, it's a contractual increase.
Okay.
And then, you know, a lot of the other items you'll see there, I tried to keep flat. Mm-hmm. But those are the main things. The IT software and the payroll are the biggest increases that you'll see in the budget.
Okay. Thank you very much. I see Representative Wolk. Did you have a question?
Jay Wolk, District 5. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Yes, I do. So a few years ago, during this time, I recall your office taking a cut for a wonderful person worked for you guys and for the town. I'm just wondering, how are you guys making with that cut? Do you still need somebody else to fill a spot, or you guys are okay?
So we definitely still need somebody else. The only reason why we've been caught up on a lot of the side work that doesn't involve dealing with the taxpayers face-to-face is the fact that we've been dealing with coronavirus. So, for example, things like the refund process, when the bank overpays on a bill because the property was sold, and it just happens, someone gets rid of a car, and the payment was, you know, they had overpaid, and then we discover they got rid of the car, so we have to give them a refund. Typically, it takes 16 to 20 weeks to get that refund to them, that money back to them, because it is a 3-step process. We have to send an application to them. The Board of Selectmen have to approve that refund, and then the finance has to process the check. This is not something, and the law requires that they request the refund. So with the staffing cuts, it's something that we have not been able to devote and make a priority. But so we've been able to reduce that in half. But that's only because of the coronavirus, and we're not currently dealing with the public temporarily. So it's something that would just go back. You know, we're providing a better service to the public right now. We're able to get refunds back to them. Another thing is we're able to research return mail. So if someone doesn't change their address with the DMV, the motor vehicle bills are based on that. So if they don't get their tax bill, it gets returned to us. We get piles of return mail. We're not always able to research it right away. And as a courtesy, I try to make it a point to get someone their bill back to them when it gets returned to us before they get charged interest. It's not always something we can do, but it's something we've been able to do right now. But with the additional staffing, it's something we could devote more time to during regular times when the public is in the office.
Is the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, you think, are aware that you do need help when this time comes, when God willing, the virus is over, and we do go back to a semi-normal environment where people are going to be coming into your office and you are going to need more help? So, you know, I'm in favor of you getting somebody to help out in your office. You're an important part of this town, and I appreciate everything that you guys do.
It is something I've brought up with in the past. It is something I've tried to address with the former finance director, and the compromise that I was provided was to provide my staff with overtime. But the overtime, the only thing that accomplishes is during collection months, it allows us to process payments faster because they're processing payments, when they're not dealing with the public. And what that avoids is the uncomfortable situation where the taxpayer calls and says, I mailed my check 2 weeks ago, it hasn't processed yet. So it takes care of multiple things. It eliminates additional unnecessary phone calls because we're processing payments quicker. And it gives that taxpayer that peace of mind knowing that they mailed their payment and it got processed in a reasonable amount of time.
Thank you very much. Take care of
You're
yourself,
welcome.
too.
Thank you.
Representative Vergara?
Hi, Dave. It's Jill Vergara for District 7. How
Hey,
are you
Jill.
doing? Hi.
Good, how are you?
Good. In April, the RTM passed the relief package, and I just wanted to see if you had a sense of how the deferments were going so far. Is it more or less than what we thought it would be at this point?
So it's actually better than we projected or expected. So as everyone may know, April was a collection month, and per the resolution, taxes were deferred. So they would have been due by May 1st. They're now actually due by July 1st. And we actually ended up collecting only 1% less than April of 2019, which equates to approximately $1.5 million less than last year. And that is a lot less than what we had originally projected. And the other thing that both the Board of Finance and the RTM had discussed was the fact that escrow payments are not eligible for this program, and there was a concern, will there be issues with that? We actually received all of the escrow money, no issues, no questions. It all came in. The banks understood they understood the executive order, and they paid timely. And then, based on that, because the numbers were better than we thought, we do anticipate the additional money coming in by June 30th. Technically, everyone has until the end of June to pay timely. Again, this is just a deferment. It's not a reduction of taxes. So because the numbers are so well, we anticipate the majority of it to come in the next month and a half. And also, we are going to be, sending out our new, we send out our bills, even though they're quarterly, real estate bills are due 4 times a year. We send out one mailing in July, or it's due in July, so we send it out in mid to late June. So the other thing is people will receive their new set of bills in mid to late June, and that will kind of serve as a reminder that their bills are deferred, but they've received a new bill. So it will serve as a reminder because they're also going to receive an insert that talks about the deferment. So we anticipate between June 15th and July 1st a huge wave of payments coming in as the deferment period, the first round of deferment, comes to an end.
That's good to hear that receipts are higher than you had originally anticipated. Have you gotten good feedback from people in terms of whether it's helped anybody who needed the help?
Yes, we've had great feedback. People are very thankful. I think, as we discussed in the past, I think this was the way to go versus the, charging a lower interest rate. It's been received very well. People have. It was hard to get the news out widespread without doing a mailing. This all happened very short notice, and we are going to do a mailing we're going to do a mailing insert for the July deferment so that everyone is aware. But when people either checked the website or called us with concerns saying, geez, I don't think I can pay my taxes. Is there anything the town is doing? It was like a breath of fresh air for them to hear over the phone that, yes, your taxes are deferred. It's an option. If you need it, you have until July 1st. So, it was very well received.
Good. Good to hear. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Aaron, you're on mute.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Representative McDermott. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mark McDermott, District 7. Dave, I think my question was answered when you were speaking, addressing Mr. Wolf's, Representative Wolf's question. The overtime earnings line, you just started budgeting for that in last year's budget. And I think you lost that position, the other position, in 2019. But obviously, this is a more economical way to get that extra work done, being down a person, I would assume.
Correct. Yeah, like I was saying, it addresses one issue, which is during our 4 collection months when, we are down that one person, the position was actually taken away in, it was removed in June of 2017. So for that, next upcoming fiscal year. And we had a lot of trouble that upcoming July because we were down a person. And like I said, there was a high volume of calls of people saying, well, gee, I sent my payment 2.5 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, and the check hasn't cleared yet. So it was creating a ripple effect. It was a lot of extra work for us, even though we were short-staffed. So my solution was, okay, if my request to fulfill, bring back the position is not possible, then, let's do overtime. Let's get my staff to be able to put payments through at a more efficient pace so that we eliminate these calls and we provide, peace of mind and a better service to the taxpayers. But it doesn't eliminate the other things throughout the other, 8 to 9 months out of the year, which is, like I said, refunds, they happen. People get rid of cars, people sell houses, taxes are paid ahead of time, and the refund process takes time, and it's something that actually the position that was taken away, that was one of their main jobs was managing the refund process. And that's something that my deputy tax collector has had to absorb along with all of her other duties.
Okay.
So she's able to do it. It's just, it's a longer process, that's all.
Right. So would you say then your service is not as good?
Yeah, that'd be correct. Yeah, for sure.
Because prior to that overtime line, in 2017, you had a seasonal payroll line. What was that for? Was that for that tax collection time?
That was before my time. I have not used seasonal payroll. I believe it may have been because we weren't using a lockbox service where we have the bank process some of the mail for us that, isn't an issue to process. But my logic was, instead of using seasonal payroll, because I really, I need people to work 4 months out of the year and not 4 months in a row. So I need someone every 3 months. So it's, in my mind, it would be hard to find someone that I can say, hey, I only need you for 3 weeks every 3 months. So my thought was, by the time I train the seasonal person, the 3 weeks is over and they weren't as efficient as I thought. So my feeling was, I'd rather do overtime. I have this staff that is very efficient. They know what they're doing. It's just that they're held back by the line of people out the door or the phones that are ringing constantly. So even if they work an hour before or an hour after, the amount of production they can accomplish in that scenario is astronomical. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Representative Durrell?
People's Bank. People can still use People's Bank. Has that gone up, down, about the same? It's been a couple of years. I'm just curious, and has it been impacted by the COVID, or more people mailing in their taxes, or if you can give like percentages and all that, as best you can.
Sure. So People's Bank, making payments at the branch, we have this service where you can go to any People's Bank in the state of Connecticut. It doesn't have to be Fairfield. It can be the Stop and Shop branches. It can be any of the normal branches. That's always hovered around 2 or 3% overall. It's not as used. It's more like it's there if you need it. If you live at the other side of town and you don't want to come down to town hall, if you live at the other end of town, you can go to one of the branches. We're not open during evenings or weekends, so that's another option. Is if you want to pay in person, but you can only commit to doing this on evenings or weekends, we say, okay, go to the Stop and Shop branches because they are open weekends and evenings. So it's more or less just an option. It's a little difficult now because they are only open through their drive-through.
Right.
They were accepting payments like normal between April 1 and May 1. But I make the daily deposits to People's Bank on Beach Road, and because it's only drive-through service, there are times where the line of cars is, 12 to 15 cars deep backed up to the road. So I can't speak for the other locations, but obviously with it being only drive-through, it's not the best service at the time being.
So was it approximately 2 or 3% before the crisis started? I mean, only 1 out of 50 or 1 out of 40 people pay their taxes?
Yeah, it's stayed around 2 or 3%. It's probably, I don't have the figure off the top of my head. It's always been 2 or 3% in normal times. It's probably, if I had to guess, it's probably dropped a little just because, like I said, going to the bank has not been easy because it's a drive-through service now. Right. You don't have the option of both.
Right. Is there do they charge a fee at all or anything like that? Or is that just out of the goodness of their heart? Or?
The branch doesn't charge a fee to the taxpayer. It's set up in that they have to have the original bill because the branch they can't serve as a tax collector. They're basically just a messenger. So they have to have the original bill with a scan bar that's designed for People's Bank. And as long as there's no issues on the bill, it can't say back taxes due, then they're able to pay with the original bill.
No, it's wonderful because I've actually used it in Greenwich where I teach, actually leaving when it's the last day of the month and it's payday. Also, what percentage mail in their taxes? I mean, I generally ask these questions every year, so you probably can roll your eyes if you want. But.
So no, that's no problem. It's hard to give a number to that because so the branch payments, they're coming in, in their isolated way. It's easy to pinpoint the branch payments. It's also easy to target the online payments, but whether it's payments through the mail or payments in person, they kind of come through the same exact way. And unfortunately, my system can't, my system can't separate and divide up the two. So it's hard to differentiate.
Right, exactly.
What I can say is that, the way people pay in person is they come in the very first week when they first get their bill. There's people that want to just pay the bill the second they have it in their hand. And then there's another large wave that will wait till the very last day or the very last week. So it comes in waves.
Right. Okay. And I've asked you this every year. Has anyone paid above and beyond their tax bill to you, basically out of the goodness of their heart, to put in the general fund, which is, an opportunity? Not that I'm just curious. I'm always wondering if anyone wants to do that or can do that or will do that because we need it.
We typically don't get that type of offer. And even if we did, it's complicated because the system would just show a credit that says that we have to give that money back to the person. It shows as a credit that we either have to, per the taxpayer's authorization, transfer to the following year to their next bill or give out as a refund. There is one scenario, it's a little different than what you described that I'm working on right now is Invoice Cloud, our online payment vendor. They have offered to all their clients the ability, they're going to absorb the 95-cent flat fee that everyone pays when they do an ACH payment online and they pay with their bank account. And they're offering to donate that 95-cent flat fee to a charity of our choice. So I've suggested to the town that we donate it to the town's COVID relief fund.
Oh, appreciate it. Okay, and
so that is
one
in the works. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask one other question. The credit card, machine in front, I've always been fascinated by that was it 3% extra if you pay via how many people do that? I mean, that's... So,
and again, that's a combination of two choices. You pay by credit card or you pay by the ACH option. And if I were to combine those two types of transactions and say, okay, how many people pay online, it's probably about 10% overall. It is 10%
of the people? 10% of the
10%. Well, 10% of the overall revenue of the overall taxes paid. I can't speak for how many people do it, but the dollar amount is about 10%.
Wow. Okay.
And it is something we try to promote, but it is a process. People that either are not tech savvy or are not familiar, right. That's another thing is we have to explain this process to them. We have to, because the system doesn't allow us to just take payments in person, nor would we want to, because it would be an even longer transaction. But we have to kind of walk them through step by step and tell them, click this button, go to this page. We have to kind of, the first-time users, we have to tell them, and it may not even be a first-time user. If you pay your taxes once a year, you might, forget how to do it. So then they call us again a year later. I like to pay my taxes online, but I forgot what to do. So my staff has to walk the taxpayers through step by step on how to accomplish it.
Okay.
So even though it's something that should be saving time, it is something that we still have to, give guidance on.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for your time and service, and have a good evening.
You're welcome. You too.
Yep. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Are there any more questions for the tax collector? Looks like not. So thank you so much for your time and for your explanations. I hope you have a good evening.
Oh, I think Janine has one.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm just typing quick enough.
Sure.
Janine, RTM, Alino 10. I have a quick question, and it's more like, so I think one of the people that my bank pays. So if the town hall has been closed, how does the process work? You're getting really good payments, and there's a deferment. So do you just have one person working? How does it work? I haven't been to town hall in a long time, so I don't really know much about tax collection. But what's the process like right now, and is there room for innovation to make it easier for people in the future that might not be able to get into the town hall?
So, and this goes for every department in Old Town Hall. The town has a policy that says we have 50% staffing in the office every other day. So in my office, we have 6 individuals currently. So 3 people work in the office one day, and then they work from home the next day, and then in the office they rotate. And this is necessary because my office, we have very high volume of phone calls. We have multiple main lines to the office. We can have anywhere from 3 to 4 phone calls happening simultaneously. So we found it easier to be in the office answering the calls and, providing assistance to taxpayers that way versus everyone working from home. We also process payments through the mail. So we do have, multiple ways. We have payments coming in from the mail. We also have a drop box in the lobby since you cannot come into the office. So we're processing mail from.
Okay.
Correct. Yes.
Oh, and that's good. So they were set up to be able to work at home, and then you guys can work as a team and get the work done. So you're not really behind on getting the payments in.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you so much. I think we're all set, and I hope you have a nice evening. Thanks for your time. Okay.
You're welcome.
Good night. We're moving on now to the library. For members, it's numbers 7010 and 7011 on page 237 of the budget book. Is Ms. Murtha on?
I am here. Can you hear me?
How are you tonight? Yes, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Good. I'm glad everybody's fine. I'm going to just make a brief statement, and then I'll take questions because things have changed a lot, as you know. I first want to thank RTM members. As many of you, all of you know, we've done a big push to get people to sign up for library cards, and so many of you have been so helpful reaching out to your constituents, so we want to thank you a lot. I understand the need to be responsive to the economic uncertainty we now find ourselves in, but I just want to make a push for libraries because they're institutions that evolve with the needs of the public. Library services become even more vital in times of crisis or economic downturn, and Fairfield's libraries are a valuable town asset that are essential as we move through this crisis and as we get past it. And I know you all know you're getting our millions of emails about how much virtual programming we're doing. We're running programs to help people get on their devices to get things. We're doing job search still. We're doing Zumba. We're doing meditation. And I just want to say, I'll say this publicly to us, an amazing staff that has just switched to this new mode of serving, and they've risen to the occasion, and they're amazing. So if you have questions on the budget.
I guess I have a question. I'm just wondering how you'll manage with the cut to library materials.
It's troubling. As we move to digital, it's more expensive. And we have we're also, as we move forward through this pandemic, we're trying to figure out how we're going to move to circulating physical items as well. So it's going to be a little bit of a balancing act. We're working on that right now. Okay. As they said at the Board of Finance, it's going to be more wait times for people. We're trying to combat that with going back to older parts of our collection and trying to interest people that way of things that classics and things like, we're working. It's understood what's going on right now, and we're working hard to meet that.
Great. Representative Spolier. Marcy. Oh, hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, great. This is Marcy Spolier, District 4. I was just wondering, it looks like per the original Selectmen's budget, you went down 2 staff positions. I know one of those wasn't full, and one of them was switched over to Fairfield Woods Library. I also know the Board of Finance cut from your part-time staff, and I just wanted to know how that's going to impact you and where you expect that staff, what to be lost as a result of that.
Okay. The switch, it was actually one full-time position because the switch was just from Maine to Woods, so that was fine. The other position that was full-time, in the last administration, we were to prepare for, find ways to cut down in administration so we could cut that position. We're hoping, the idea was to go onto an automated payroll system, and that was going to alleviate a lot. We're still not there, but we're working towards it, so hopefully that's going to happen. It wasn't to public service. It was in administration behind the scenes. I've been searching for ways to streamline. The part-time is troublesome. Right now, all full-time people are working, so since we're close to the public and doing behind the scenes, that we're able to handle that. It's this uncertainty that we're in because when we open again, it'll depend how this pandemic goes, and if we can open again, that will affect the hours if we don't have part-time help. If we can open, that it's everybody's in a quandary how that's going to play out. But if it will mostly direct the hours the library is open.
Can I have one follow-up question? I know, before when we've had problems with finances and recession with people losing their jobs, the library has been such a great resource to all of those in our community to really help with resumes and services for job finding. Do you expect that need to come back if we're allowed to come back to the libraries? And if so, do you anticipate increased costs as a result and having to find that in your budget somewhere?
Well, right now, we haven't stopped the service. Of course, it's less, and also the job market's a little bit struggling right now. But we are doing virtual. We have a job consultant, and we're working with that right now. And as far as we consider that a primary expense, and actually the Friends of the Library are helping us with that expense. So that service is still there because we consider that one of the most vital things we provide.
Thank you. I really appreciate all the services from the library. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Representative Georgiadis.
Yes.
Hi, Drew Georgiadis, District 9. I just wanted to say I'm really sorry that your budget's been cut. My sister's a librarian. I value the library tremendously. And during these COVID times, especially, but definitely over the last 3 or 4 years, I have become a big fan of the digital availability through Libby, and it's really hard to get a book. So can you just talk a little bit about how this budget cut is going to affect the purchasing, or I'm not sure if it's a purchase or a lease of digital novels?
Yeah, it's going to affect it, and as you pointed out, there are wait times, and I think it was pointed out at the Board of Finance. We actually have reduced the wait times at the beginning of this. I think it was up to 25 days. It's down to 19 days. We're working on it hard, trying to balance it. I don't know. I could get into the whole publishing industry and what they do to libraries, and there's all these different things to negotiate, and it's great for print books because you
versus buying a. Could you just do buying a book versus buying a digital book?
Yeah, way different. You buy a book and it can cost whatever. So say, okay, so you buy a book a book that is $17 on Amazon. We could probably get a physical book for $15, but then the ebook can be $55, and then the audio book can be $45. It's a whole game with libraries and publishers, and I don't want to get it. Some have perpetual licensing for the ebooks.
I mean, especially with COVID and not wanting an actual book. I mean, and in the past few years, have you seen a shift from
surprisingly
a hard copy to a digital?
Okay, incremental in the past few years to digital. It does constantly pick up for digital, but for ebooks, but not as much as you would think. People still cling. We're seeing, though, a bigger push now, and we're pushing it. We're running Zoom meetings all the time to show people how to access, how to get on the digital, how to use Libby. We have tutorials. We have live sessions. So I think we're going to see a big surge there. We're definitely moving our purchasing over that way through this, but it's a matter of balancing, because figuring out in the future, we can't totally ignore print, because although it's hard to believe, we will get past this at some point.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Representative Vergara.
Thank you. Jill Vergara for District 7. Thanks for joining us tonight. I really am a supporter of the library. My daughter goes there every day after school when she was going to school at Roger Ludlow Middle School, and she really utilizes it. I have to say I don't utilize it as much as I should, but I find it really comforting to have it, and I think it's an important asset for our community, a huge resource. To be honest, with everything happening in the economy and in our country right now, I did think that if the decision had come to me and the Board of Finance hadn't cut, I would have also contemplated a cut. I think that they went too deep, though, and I would consider restoring some. And I was wondering whether you had contemplated an appeal.
I had contemplated appeal. I much preferred Mr. Matola's suggestion. But at this point, it's a discussion.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to put it out there that I am a member who would support an appeal to a certain extent. Thank you so much for what you do. Thanks.
Thank you.
Ms. Murtha, can you just tell us what Mr. Matola's suggestion was, what you're referring to?
I think I don't have it in front of me right now. He tried to amend the cut. He did propose a cut, but it was less than what was originally proposed. I don't have. I apologize. I don't have it right in front of me right now.
That's okay. That's okay. Thank you, Representative Perrin.
Ms. Ackerman, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I thought it was he had asked for, rather than $200,000, it was going to be a $100,000 reduction.
And that was
It might
during
be
the voting.
that might have been part-time. There were two lines. I'm talking about materials. Is that correct? Okay.
Right. It was
Material.
50-50 between the two. For
Thank you.
Matola's cut. Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Representative Perham?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Yes.
Oh, you can?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. I just wanted to say I used to spin the wooden wheel at Woods to decide what book I had to read that week. Have my black and white Polaroids of that, and used to go there after school from Woods. I know going to Woods now, a lot of the kids do go to Woods, as Jill said, her daughter goes from Ludlow, and I'm wondering how I see that there's like always this, mass entrance of middle school kids going into Woods every afternoon before their family picks them up after work. And it looks like there's librarians that are kind of set up to, welcome them and have the program starting for them and giving them study rooms and showing them where things are. Is this budget cut going to affect the way the students are able to be, serviced after school before their family picks them up in the afternoon?
Absolutely. If the school's open and the part-time budget is cut that severely, because Woods has the teen librarian, Jen Laceman, has done such an amazing job of even building that program stronger than it ever has been. And what they do down there's STEAM projects, there's, writing projects, there's craft, they're doing amazing things. So if the part-time budget's cut, and again, it's going to depend on when the schools open up, when we open up to the public, and it will if whatever the timing is, if the budget's cut significantly, that's going to affect hours and the assistance we can have to run a program like that, because we use part-time people to help staff that.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Wolk?
Hey, Wolk, District 5. First and foremost, I also agree with Representative Vergara that if you are willing to go for an appeal, I would be willing to do that also. I believe that these cuts are too deep also. So what I'm hearing is that, with this cut, it will impact, when people start coming back to the library, will impact the unemployed. Correct with that? That's all the materials that are going to be cut, they help people who are unemployed in finding jobs? Is that part of the material?
Yes.
So, I've been an advocate for our libraries, ever since coming on to the RTM.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And it brings revenue. I don't think some of my colleagues may not know, it does bring revenue to the town. Meetings, when you guys, renting rooms, all that money comes back to the town. So yes. I think this cut is way too deep, and I hope we as a body can figure something out to alleviate some of this cut that you're going to, that the Board of Finance is putting upon you. All right, thank you for everything that you do, and you stay well.
Thank you. You too.
Representative Gottlieb?
Sorry, bear with me. Julie Gottlieb, District 5. I wanted to thank Dr. Murtha for joining us tonight as well. I think it really says something about how big a part of our lives the library is, to keep hearing all these personal stories as everybody comes online. And like the folks who had spoken already earlier, I'm a huge fan of all three of our libraries and have supported them as a member of the RTM. And as a patron for many years. I also am one of those folks that wait patiently for 19 weeks for the
19 days, not weeks. Come on. It feels like 19 weeks.
Yeah, it seems like it, especially when it's a good book.
Right.
And in fact, my now college freshman made his first ever protest sign in support of the library at a budget vote.
Yes.
11 years ago. So I was I'm going to restate a couple things because I think it's important. I was pleased to see your original budget, which had the 2% materials increase, which was in line with costs. And the majority of the other increases in expenses in line items where you have little control, like the ADA accommodations and moving to subscription-based Windows 10 and those things. And I agree, it is a real shame to have seen the library budget cut so deeply as we head into, what's being called the Great Recession, and so many people in our town under deep financial pressure. I feel like I could literally lift my comments from about 10 years ago when we were talking about how the free resources are so much more critical than ever, not just the books, but the job seeker programs, the guidance for accessing small business loans now, skills learning, all of those things. We all know what they are. I, too, would urge you to look into an appeal. You would certainly have my support for that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Representative Kelly.
Hi, this is Chrissy Kelly, District 9. I've just had a quick question because it was the first time I was hearing about it during the, when I was listening to the Board of Finance meetings. And could you speak a little bit more about the endowment that the library has and how much do you typically, annually, like what do you typically take out of the endowment, or what kind of draw is there from the endowment, and what restrictions, if any, you have on what you can spend that money on? Thank you.
Okay, no problem. There are a lot of restrictions on the endowment. It's the trustees' money. I don't control that money. Last January, if you look at the minutes probably from meeting 2019, not 2020, sorry, 2019, they made a decision to draw on that for some expenses they had before. I can only speak to when I was director. So they could draw on it for some, they have financed some professional development, and also they have started, and those of you that know Woods knows it needs a little TLC. So they have started to finance, we've hired somebody to look into space planning and how we should move forward to make the accommodations better there, to update it. So those are two things that they're working on right now. So last year, I think it was about, in 2019, they allotted about $74,000 to use that for the year for those two projects. And we're working on now what it will be for this year. So they it's not to be used for operational expenses. It can't be used for operational expenses. So materials, salaries, not for that.
It's coming from when they were volunteering it to help pay for the proposed parking lot when they were going to do that.
Right, because that would fit in with. Yeah, that would fit in with something they could contribute to. Also, I should say they also do when there was a search for the town librarian, they pay for that. They pick up those type of expenses.
Gotcha.
And also, it has grown with a good market. That I don't know if that's going to stay the way it is.
Right. We can all relate to that. Yes.
Right. We all know.
Yeah.
Okay, Representative Pastilli.
Hi, Sharon Pastilli, District 3. I had one comment and then one question. I just wanted to mention that I would support an appeal. My son in middle school spent quite a bit of time in the Down Under program with Jen Laceman, and it was a real special place to be rather than, to be out shopping on Black Rock Turnpike or doing other things that kids in middle school may or may not be doing. And it really provided a place to belong and to be, cool with playing board games and cool with, playing video games with your friends. And I think that connection and a place to be after school during that window of time before your parents are home from work and, while you're also in between developmentally, right? You'd rather be with people. You don't necessarily, want to go straight home, but you're not able to play on the playground anymore like you were in elementary school, and you don't have a driver's license. And with anxiety going through the roof among our adolescents, I think that it does bring a sense of community that alleviates anxiety, and that creates a sense of connection that is going to be even more critical as we get through this pandemic. So for those reasons, for the developmental reasons, for the mental health of our adolescents, I would support an appeal. And then I had one other question regarding materials, and I used to work in music publishing, so I understand intellectual property, but I don't have experience in book publishing. If we decided as residents that we wanted to donate a digital book and it's cheaper, like on Amazon, does the licensing transfer to you, or
No, it doesn't.
Okay,
No.
I figured.
Thank you, though.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I just want to add one more thing that I did not include with what the library board pays from the endowment. It also pays a lot of money. They're paying, there's a debt schedule from when the library was redone. I'm not sure of the year right now. It's on a schedule, and every year, I think it was $129,000 this year, and it's part of our revenue, and they pay that every year. That's a big part of what they pay out of that.
Thank you. Representative Alianello?
Oh, hi, Janine Alianello, RTM 10. I just have a question about with COVID and the constant changing of, protocols. We were trying to collect books and maybe donate them to lesser privileged communities, and they said, listen, we really don't want, the books because we don't want to be contagious or things like that. Do you have guidance from the Department of Health, and if you are to require to do some sort of cleaning or protocol, do you have anything built in for that cost that could potentially be put upon you? Because no one really wanted to collect the books. We weren't allowed to drop them off places, and I don't know if it's changed, but is that something that the library has factored in at all for, the materials, like how you would potentially have to follow any guidelines that might be told to you?
Okay, so right now, all libraries in Connecticut are following the CDC guidelines. I can speak for Fairfield. We're not taking donations right now. They're usually through the Friends anyway, and it would just be an added burden at this point. We just started taking materials back, and the advice is we did check into all these machines that do all these great things, and it was that they would damage materials and that it was overkill. So right now, the process is to quarantine them for 3 days before anybody touches them. So they come in, we have bins with things labeled, they sit for 3 days, and then we'll return them, scan them, and we're not charging overdue fines, of course, through this whole thing. So that's what we're doing, and this will be a consideration if we move to being able to circulate materials soon.
Oh, great. Thank you for all you do. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I did it again. I'm sorry, folks. Representative Tallman.
Hi, Peter Tallman, District 8. I actually was going to ask about the endowment fund myself. It was the first I even knew about it, and I know there are a lot of members that definitely didn't know there was $7 million in it. It would probably be a good time to talk to your board and see if they can come up with some creative ways to help us through what we're going through instead of putting more on the taxpayers. But that's a nice chunk of money to use, and I think now's a good time to use it. So thank you.
Okay, just to clarify, it's not $7 million, and it was reported every year. I'm kind of perplexed by that people didn't know, because it would be reported the balance of it every year at the Board of Finance budget hearing. So I apologize that people didn't know, but it has been reported, and the bank statements go to the Finance Department every month.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I apologize. And how much is it anyway?
No, that's totally fine. I think I do not have the number in front of me. Like I said, at one point it was that probably. I think it's down just below 6.
Right, because normally what they would use...
I understand your point.
They would use the proceeds from that, not necessarily endowment fund itself. So,
Right.
you know, I imagine
It's
the last
be,
few years they've been making a good return on it, so it might be some money to help the libraries out.
It sounds like, this is Karen Wackerman, it sounds like the money is restricted, though, as to use. Is that right?
Well,
it is. It would be a little bit involved.
Times. Maybe it's time to talk to the board and see if we can loosen up some of those restrictions. That's all. I'll leave it to you guys here on it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. To follow up on Mr. Tallman's comment, we were just informed that the endowment paid for the renovation and is paying the, the cost of the, whatever the fund, whatever the costs are.
The bond repayment.
The bond repayment. So the endowment is contributing to the town. What did you say? I'm sorry, like $125,000 a year?
I think it was this year.
In bond repayment?
Yeah.
So it is contributing to the town, and it did contribute to the town by doing a fantastic extension. So it's not just sitting there. It is being used for the people of Fairfield. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from Ms. Murtha? Give everybody a minute to let me know. Okay, I think not. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Ms. Murtha, and I hope you have a good evening. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. To all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is the Pequot Library. Do we have Dr. Coakley on the line? Dr. Coakley here? Stephanie? Perhaps we'll skip that and come back to it.
She's there, but she was muted. I just unmuted her.
Oh, okay, thank you. Oh, yes, I can hear you now. Thank you. How are you?
Oh, good. Good evening. I was saying that Dr. Coakley sounds great, but it has a good ring to it, but I'm not quite there in my education just yet. Thank you, though.
Oh, okay. I'd like to give people promotions.
Yes.
So thanks for being here. Can you give us just a little overview of the budget and the library for context?
Yes, most definitely. And I'd like to mention that our finance manager, John Gleckler, is on the line as well in case there are questions, which I expect, about the projected losses in revenue due to COVID-19. So I thank John, my colleague, for being here. And I also want to thank nearly all of our devoted Pequot team is listening in tonight, and a big shout out to that rock star team of librarians. So thanks, guys, for being out there. I want to thank all of the RTM for all that you do for our town, and I especially thank you for inviting us here tonight to talk a little bit about Pequot Library and hopefully answer some questions that might be on all of your minds. I sincerely thank the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance for their recent support and consideration. And I, too, am really sorry for the deep cuts presented this past Monday, especially to our peers at Main and Woods. Just to kind of quickly recap the funding model that is Pequot in the town, I think we're about at 1/10 of 1% of the town's budget, and Pequot raises 80% of our annual operating budget. Thanks to the town, we're able to leverage our appropriation. And we raise all of our capital needs for our beautiful old 125-year-old building, which, believe me, we're really spending a lot of time on properly caring for that, which it's never really had a whole lot of much needed maintenance. So as you all know, I know many of you agree every last public dollar is critical, and I hope it doesn't come across the wrong way, but I do want to just reiterate that town funding is critical to Pequot, and it helps support us by enabling us to privately raise the remaining percentage of our operating budget and all of those capital needs. So that public-private split, we, as you know, don't receive all of our operational revenue from the town, and it takes us over $1 million to operate Little Pequot, and we raised that, again, committing to this leveraging of our town allocation. And since closing in mid-March, Pequot's suffering substantial cuts through the loss in income every day from our revenue-generating programs, which, of course, are on hold, like many others. Our summer book sale likely not happening, sadly. It's the 60th year, and we're all just devastated about that. All the other fundraisers that have had to be postponed and canceled. So, of course, no surprise, we're experiencing major destabilizing financial conditions, and it's really just growing every day. Pequot Library, a little bit more like I'm going to say it's a little bit more like a baby calf. We're kind of a little guy in the room, not so much the sacred cow. There's no fat to trim. We're down to the bone. In fact, we're through the bone. And into this next year, I'm really concerned that we have come face to face with perhaps one of the worst years in our financial history because of the projected losses in special event income. And any major cut to Pequot in its public support this year will really, I think, impact how much we're able to raise in private funds. And I just wonder where that difference will come from. We have about 565 people who donate to Pequot on average. That might surprise some of you. It's a fairly modest number. We're working really hard to grow that and expand our reach. Those gifts average about $300 a year. And it's confusing to the public at times because we constantly are reminding people that we're a private charitable organization, not fully funded by our local municipality. And so I know there's been a lot of talk about endowments. Ours is modest. It's hovering around $3.5 million, and John can clarify for me. And if there are any questions about how our endowment is set up, 40% of that is reserved, donor restrictions in place that ethically and legally we are bound to and committed to. There's just no way of working around that. We wouldn't want to. It's donor restricted, and we're stewards of those donations. So that restriction is for the care and preservation of the rare books. We cannot use it for operations. And if we were to be forced to survive off the endowment, Pequot would be flat broke in 2 years. I have patrons who ask me, how come a cut to Pequot when times are bad? If potentially a cut to Pequot, there's been no increase to Pequot when times have been good. So that's kind of our fundraising model, and I thought I'd address a little bit about how we're different. It's a bit hard to compare us, I would say, to the other libraries. We're not financially in the town budget starting on the same playing field. As far as town support goes, we're not at that same starting line in so many ways. Fairfield, Public, and Woods perhaps maybe have a little bit more of an understanding of their revenue. And Pequot, our revenue is always a bit of an unknown from year to year. It's, believe me, no easy feat. Running a complex, small public library that is a library and so much more. We're this rare books library. And in fact, we're kind of like a museum. We have this historic building. We're also a nonprofit arts and culture center. And I kept thinking in the last couple of days that all three of us are the same, but we're also really different. And my colleague, Dr. Mersa, and I will talk, and we'll talk about how different we are. We get it. And Pequot Library, from our perspective, we're a little bit of a complex animal, and I had the thought the other day that we're kind of like a zebra to the Fairfield Public Library's horse. I mean, we're this hybrid of a museum and a public library. And although libraries in our name, we're this nonprofit charity who doesn't subsist on 100% municipal support. So we offer public library services. We kind of look the same, but I think after a closer examination, we're different for many reasons. And we offer a bit that isn't found in any other government entity, like a museum. We have this collection of irreplaceable materials, books you can't find anywhere else, like the Shakespeare folios from the 1600s, the archives. I could go on and on. I promise I won't. But I think you get that we are a bit different and offer things that you can't find anywhere else. And as a nonprofit, we're raising all this money to keep the doors open, and there's no substantial reserves. So also, I just wanted to point out for maybe if it isn't clear, I think it is, we're not a department in the town's budget. We pay for our own utilities, HR, finance, facility needs, health insurance, retirement plan, and more. I report to a board of trustees, and we don't have the administrative support in the form of budget development or insurance. And so I just hope that when you see that $350,000 line, which we are most grateful for, I think it's a fraction of the total library expenditures, somewhere around 9 or 10% for the town, whereas 90 or 91% is for Main and Woods, and for being as open just as much as all the other libraries. I think we're doing our part and more. In fact, I was reminded as I was preparing for tonight that it didn't take me any additional thought. I didn't think twice about it when we needed to open our doors early, when Maine suffered that unfortunate Thanksgiving Day water leak. We, for 2 months, opened our doors early. We had a long line of people out the door, and I was just so moved that we absolutely had to open our doors and accommodate. It was packed. Pequot was packed for months because we had these displaced library patrons, and we were honored to be there for our friends at Maine, and I know that they feel the same about us. We contribute to the book circulation software. We're honored to participate in One Book, One Town, with contributing to helping that program financially. We will continue to do whatever possibly that is in our ability to support our colleagues at Main and Woods. And so I know that was a lot. There's a lot to complicated little Pequot, but I thank you so very much.
Thank you. Representative Georgiadis.
Hi, Drew Georgiadis, District 9. Thank you for that very just large overview, because Pequot is very unique. But I was a little confused. You kept going back and forth. Like 1 minute you're talking like it's a town library, and the next minute you're a nonprofit. Now, Pequot gets the $350,000 through the nonprofit category of organizations that the town supports. Is that correct?
Yes, we have been in the nonprofit miscellaneous category.
Yes, and and you're the one nonprofit of all of those nonprofits we support that has some kind of overlay with other services provided by the town, correct? Like you're a library. I know you're a unique, fantastic library, but there is a little bit of overlap versus maybe some of the other nonprofits that don't have overlap, correct? They provide unique...
We are a public library. We're this unique combination of a public library that's an association, nonprofit. There's 13 towns, I think, in Connecticut that benefit from this public association format. I think it's great that Fairfield is able to have 3 libraries, and we all complement one another. We offer services that you can't find at Fairfield Public and Woods, and we're proud to be able to do that.
I'm just trying to make sure that the public that's listening understands, you know, because you started off, your first thing was like, oh, we only get X percent of the town budget, but you are a nonprofit and you get the money, the $350,000 through that category of donation, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Representative Ringel.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Marissa Ringel, District 10. Thank you so much, Dr. Croakley, for speaking on behalf of the Pequot Library. I just wanted to ask you, I've grown up in Southport and have taken my kids to many events, and the Pequot Library has been such a cultural hub in our community, you know, the wider Fairfield and Southport. And it's such an epicenter of family activity, the events that are thrown there, the programming, and, you know, from everything like camp outs and storytelling on the front lawn to movie nights. And I'm not sure if all of the RTM know what a service that you all do to the community and what's available for families for no fee or low fees. If you can explain to us a little bit more about that.
Sure. I think of the 4th of July bike parade that I was looking at old photos of that earlier today. We're sadly likely not going to see that this summer, where we close down the street and hundreds of families come from all over for that fun community event. And we're all really disappointed at Pequot for not being able to host the Fairfield Public Schools Art Show this later on this May, as we have done for years and years. Host Leadville High School interns. We usually have 2 right now. So I think Representative Ringel, if you're talking about the community events that we offer here at Pequot that you can't find anywhere else, I think you mentioned the holiday caroling parties for horse-drawn carriage rides through the village. There's really a great deal. The camp out, where else can you pitch a tent and families come to sleep under the stars and by the train and enjoy family-made food with one another every June? We're sadly looking to not do that as well. Is that what you were referring to, Representative Ringel?
Yes, absolutely. I just wanted to emphasize that these are free. You don't have to pay them, and you can come from all over Fairfield to come join them. Is that correct?
Absolutely, because we're a public library.
Right, and I just wanted to emphasize that these are marvelous, wonderful experiences for the whole family that are free. And that I know, like when I wasn't earning a lot of money as a single mom, I would take advantage of them all the time. And I would imagine that the need is going to be even that much more greater in these times when families don't have a lot of income. And I do hope that the bike parade, the camp outs, the movie nights, the storytellings, all of those events that are free. The art shows, my daughter was in that from Fairfield Public Schools. She's been in the art shows before. It's actually launched some kids into their art careers. It's just such a wonderful community service that your library is also doing and not getting any revenue from that. And it's such a fantastic benefit to the town. So just, I hope that everyone can protect the budget of Pequot, and in better times we remember to, they've had the same budget for 11 years now with no increase. Yes. So I hope when we do get back to, I hope to hold the line to help with these services, especially the free ones that you've been able to do. And when we get back to good times, hopefully we can increase it a little bit. And thank you so much for the great job you're doing for the library. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you. You too.
Representative Vergara.
Thank you. Hi, Stephanie. It's nice to kind of see you. So weird, these meetings. And thank you to Representative Ringel. I thought that your comments were perfect. They were perfect descriptions of what Pequot is. I agree with you that it's an incredible asset for our entire community. They offer amazing programs that aren't offered anywhere else. My family and my kids have participated in some of them. My daughter did the book club. It was amazing. It was an amazing experience for her, and we do the campouts too. Saying that, and it's hard to say that because I feel like emotional about this, where you are a sister library. I never thought coming onto the RTM that I would ever contemplate any kind of cut to any library. And I have to say, in facing this economic reality and taking a look at the budget, I looked at it with a different eye than I ever have before. And I have contemplated doing a cut across the board. I never would have made a cut to our Main and Woods libraries as what the Board of Finance did. I thought it was too deep. But I also, not to even it out, because I think that you're different. I think that you're a nonprofit, and it would only be if I touched all of the nonprofits with cuts, and that's also terrible to say that that's even conceivable to do, because all of our nonprofits offer incredible resources to our community and provide services that some services that our town can't provide. But it's very concerning to me, the kind of economic situation we're facing, and so I am contemplating a very small percentage cut. I wanted to be open about that. I also wanted to commend Sonal Rajan for writing a beautiful letter for you, and I think that that's what it's all about. Her letter is what made me, is what is really in my head, keeping me from sleeping, really, because it's what it's all about, you know. The libraries coming together and fighting for each other. The fact that her library was cut and she came out and advocated for you, I think that that's what it's all about, your sister libraries. And I hope going forward that Pequot can bring that into their advocacy also. And I was overwhelmed by the support for Pequot, and I think that that's a beautiful thing. I hope your patrons will also support all of our other libraries going forward as well. Thank you so much for what you do, Stephanie.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions for Ms. Coakley or Dr. Coakley? Nope, I don't think so. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us, Stephanie, and I hope you have a good evening. Thanks for your time.
Thank you to you all as well. Thanks for the time you're putting into these difficult decisions, and I just hope that you will think about how a cut to Pequot will compound our already existing major cuts, and thanks again.
Thank you very much. I know that Culture and Penfield is next, but I'm wondering if the fire chief is on the call. We were going to try to move public safety up if the fire commission finished their meeting. Is Chief McCarthy on the call? Perhaps not. Okay, so we'll go ahead and turn to Penfield Pavilion, which is budget number 7030 on page 245. Mr. Calabrese, are you there? I see you there. Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes. How are you?
All right, perfect. I'm doing well, thank you. And
Good.
Thank you for not skipping me. I appreciate that.
We just thought that the public safety folks have had their hands full the last few months, but I know all of you had, so thank you for being here.
No problem. The recreation budgets, you know, there's 6 of them. They are all out in front of you right now. You'll see modest increases across the board. Happy to answer any questions. I mean, I think you guys probably followed the Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen. So you have probably heard every possible question that could be asked, but I'm happy to go into any details or questions that you guys would like to ask me.
I'm sure that you've been asked this and answered it multiple times, but can you talk about the revenue from the Penfield Pavilion and how you see that turning out this year? Are you having cancellations of events or?
Based on the governor's executive orders right now, everything for the end of March, all of April, all of May, and all of June have been either rescheduled or canceled and refunded, depending. I want to say it's probably 75% have been rescheduled as opposed to refunded.
So how much of a loss in revenue was that roughly?
I don't have that number in front of me right now.
Okay. And I guess it's hard to know going forward how long this will last. So have you had people? Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead.
We have to follow the executive orders of the governor, and right now, you can't have a social gathering of more than 5. So that puts a real damper on a lot of the things we try to do.
Yes. Okay, Representative Vergara, I see you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Jill Vergara. Hi, Anthony. Thanks so much for being here with us. You've been spending a lot of time on budget. I have a question about revenue also. I guess it's comments, honestly. Considering the fact that we're only allowed to have groupings of 5 people, it just seems unrealistic to have based our revenue projections on a July 1st total open. I can't understand it being May 15th and thinking that we're going to have a total open, meaning like you'll be able to have weddings and parties and the sand jam and the comedian show, and it's almost it's like Twilight Zone almost. I don't understand how it's even conceivable to anybody that could happen in the next couple months. So, and it seems irresponsible, honestly. So, I would really like I guess I'm just saying that. I think it's irresponsible to put out some of these booklets suggesting that these programs are going to go on. And when we've made this cost-benefit analysis of whether our kids can go to school right now, and we've opted to not send them to school because it's so dangerous, because it's a health risk, I just don't see how we could contemplate having kids programs so soon. So that's all I'd like to say.
Representative Georgiadis.
Hi, Anthony. How are you?
I'm doing well, Drew. How are you?
I'm good. This is my question I ask every year about charging people to use the beach. And I know the question has been, we've gotten federal assistance, so therefore we have to allow access uniformly to the beach, even though we can charge for parking lots. And recently, the beaches have been restricted when they were opened up to residents only. So I'm trying to understand how those two dovetail together. Also, for social distancing, if the residents this summer want to use the beach, but we can't restrict beach usage to residents only, how are we going to possibly, charging aside and the budget aside, but they might play in, can you somehow explain to me how we're going to access the beach, the Fairfield residents, if we have to open the beach to everyone?
I will do my best to answer that
If we
question.
could charge non-residents, we could make it so exorbitant that they wouldn't come.
So right now,
Madam Moderator, is that, pardon the interruption, Madam Moderator, is that related to the budget?
Yes, it's related to the budget, Pam, because I'm trying to figure out if the revenue can be impacted by charging people to go to the beach.
So what's your question, Drew?
Madam
Who's that?
Moderator, First Selectwoman Brenda Kupchak.
Yes.
I just would like to interject. Currently, we have a state of emergency that I signed, so we are not allowing any non-residents to utilize our beaches. And that order is in place until further notice. So I don't know if that helps answer the question, but we're not having non-residents come to our beaches at this time.
Okay. How long do you think that state of emergency will last?
Right now, I'm looking at this as a safety issue for our town, and as long as the town attorney advises me that I can keep it in place so that residents only can use our space so that they can social distance in a safe way, that's what I will do.
Thank you, Brenda. Never mind, Anthony.
Representative Volk?
Jay Wolk, District 5. Hey, Anthony. I didn't recognize you at
Hi,
first. The beard.
Barbers are closed. It's rough out here.
I promise I'm not after you for anything. I'm just one thing, the rec center. So nobody coming to the rec center that does something to the budget. I mean, as far as revenue coming in, right? Is that not really a problem?
Well, most of the things that we're doing right now are our beach stickers. That's one of our biggest revenue generators in the golf courses. You know, with golf courses being open, tee times are online. Our staff is still in the office, you know, processing the beach stickers, answering hundreds of emails a day, and the phones are pretty much nonstop. We normally would have our beach sticker rush from, just before Memorial Day, basically this week till about the 4th of July. And, when the First Selectwoman put the executive order in, moving the beach sticker requirement up to May 1st.
Can somebody mute their phone? I don't know who that is talking. Sorry, Anthony.
Sorry. That's okay. When the First Selectwoman put the executive order to have beach stickers required May 1st for residents, that obviously moved our rush up to the beginning of May. So we, had about a week and a half where we had to start trying to catch up with thousands of beach stickers to process and mail. And then, the mail is being, I guess, quarantined for 3 days at the Postal Service. So it takes a little longer for them to get beach stickers out. So, we've allowed people to show receipts at the gate to get into the beach.
So Anthony, that's but I was just talking about people who wanted to work out. But the other thing I heard that we may have drive-in movies. Is that something you are thinking?
Oh, it's something my staff. Yeah, it's absolutely something my staff has been discussing. Since March, basically. I'm sure, as all you guys know, we have plenty of experience running drive-in movies. We've done it for the last several years. We've done them at Jennings. We've done them at Lake Mohegan. So, yeah, it's absolutely something we'd like to do as soon as we're given the green light by the emergency management team.
That's great news. And then you'd be able to go to the movies on your beach sticker pass, or you'd have to pay to go? I mean, I've never done it personally, so.
My guess is we would probably keep it to residents only, so we would either require the beach sticker or potentially just show your your driver's license that has a Fairfield address on it.
All right, thanks a lot, and you take care of yourself, okay?
Thanks, Jake. You too.
Representative Gale.
Hi, Anthony. I'm Dr. Gale from District 6. And I just wanted to ask about, or ask if you could let me know or let us know what you're thinking in terms of putting online programming, that for, maybe for camp or, teen activities or things that might, take advantage of the new technologies that everyone is using creatively, to provide just an opportunity to make this, something positive happen out of all this.
Absolutely. Well, first, I would recommend that everybody follows our Facebook page, Fairfield Recreation. It's an unbelievable resource. My staff, it's essentially a full-time job. My staff works extremely hard, doing 3, 4, 5 posts a day. There's a daily workout. There's virtual, libraries, virtual zoo trips, all that kind of stuff to try to keep people engaged, as well as our Wednesday night bell ringing. So those are the types of things that we've been doing throughout this pandemic to date. I believe Parks and Recreation, as you know, with everything else that's going on right now, I think we're going to have to almost reinvent ourselves going forward. As Representative Vergara was mentioning, she doesn't think that those types of programs are going to take place in the future. And I think she's partially right. We don't know what social distancing is going to look like. So I think our soccer league that was a soccer league, 11v11 or, 8v8, I don't think that's what we're going to see going forward. It might be more one-on-one clinics or smaller groups, smaller staff ratios, things of that nature, more virtual programming, as you were just mentioning. So those are all the things that my staff is currently working on, so we can roll something out starting in September, which is when our next brochure really hits.
I was sort of wondering, there are so many people who have been sitting home doing nothing for a couple of months, who are probably have rediscovered their, their passions from their youth and may have experience in certain things. Like, I don't know, there are probably people who could teach kids editing, using, Adobe or things like that, or Adobe, graphics and things like that. Like, could there possibly be like an outreach to the community looking for volunteers to do things like for kids or for people in general through Parks and Rec that, might not have been on your radar up until now?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely an opportunity. I think there's even more opportunity to partner with our public libraries. Again, we've been trying to partner with them throughout this, the pandemic that we've got now. We've started a book nook, which is kind of a book club type activity. So yeah, I think there's plenty of those kinds of opportunities going forward.
Okay, great. Thank you. It all sounds really exciting.
So I think we sort of started with Penfield Pavilion. I think we're morphing into 7050 Parks and Rec. We're touching on that. And I know Representative Gottlieb had a question about that item.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Julie Gottlieb, District 5. Hello, Tony. How are you?
I'm doing well, Julie. How are you?
Question for you on, I believe that the summer camp has been closed officially. Is that correct?
The way camp has been done in the past has been refunded to everybody that was registered. That is correct. We are evaluating the best child care option to go forward with based on the state guidelines that we have to follow.
Understood. And so does that, I think the last time we saw revenue adjustments was beginning of the week after the Board of Finance vote. So are there changes to the revenue assumptions that we last saw earlier in the week, or were those accounts, were those accounted for?
It's all accounted for. All our programming falls under one specific line item, and that's already been accounted for there.
Okay, so there's not another hit coming to your revenue because of that?
No.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Vergara.
Hi, thanks. Jill Vergara. I have one other question about the revenue reduction. So I think that for Penfield, the revenue was reduced by at least 50%. So if we consider that, why hasn't the part-time payroll or the seasonal payroll been correspondingly decreased? And can you explain to us what those part-time payroll and seasonal payroll are, what they do?
Sure. I'm not sure what numbers you're referencing. As far as the revenue goes.
Okay.
I could tell you the numbers that I see in the most recent reduction.
Okay.
And then how about you tell me if that's what you see?
Okay.
I've got Penfield 1 rentals. The budget was $335,000. That was reduced to $300,000 and $575. And then I have Jackie Durrell, which was reading $140,000 and $151,551, and that was reduced to $123,902 by the Board of Finance.
Yeah. I just have the actual adjustments that they made, actually, because I'm using the BOF adjustment sheet.
Okay, so the adjustment you see is $34,000 for Penfield 1 and $16,000 for Jackie?
Yes.
Okay. That's what I see too. I mean, that's 20. It's essentially, I believe, maybe 20% is what they did there. I'd have to do the math quick.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I just figured that it would be about 50%. So you're assuming that you're definitely going to be using those rentals. They'll be fully rented if it was 20% reduction.
Yeah, the assumption that we used to get to these numbers was that we were going to lose 50% of our parties in July and August due to either refunds or potentially whatever the executive order from the governor goes to with his. If he doesn't increase it to a reasonable number where people could have a wedding, more than 50 or 100 people, we're going to lose the revenue there. But then our rentals typically die down in those winter months. We are obviously hoping, based on everything we've seen from the CDC, from our health department, from the state, the reopening phases, they're hoping that everything's back to normal by January 1st, which would be in time for our 21 wedding season, which is where we would make a bulk of our revenue.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. That's good to know. So it's a bulk of wedding revenue starting January 1st. Okay. So what do those, sorry, I'm sorry to cut into you.
No, that's okay. I know these meetings are difficult through these Zoom things. Go ahead and ask your next question.
Okay. What does the seasonal payroll do? Like, what functions do they serve?
So seasonal payroll actually covers a couple different things. It covers all our party attendants that, work the actual party, set up the parties, clean the parties, are there during the parties. But we also have parking attendants that come out of that for the summer. We have maintenance staff that come out of that for the summer. We have our our locker room attendants that come out of that in the summer. So all of those guys have started already. Our parking attendants have been on duty as of May 1st, which is new. They don't normally start until Memorial Day weekend. So we will be picking up extra payroll there. And then obviously our locker room attendants, they'll start Memorial Day weekend. And so right now we should be saving a little on the party attendants that aren't working, but again, it's kind of getting offset with the parking attendants that are working since May 1st. So.
Okay, I see. And then for the locker room, you're not anticipating just canceling that for the entire summer? It seems like it's inside, not very well ventilated. Doesn't seem like a great idea.
It's actually really well ventilated.
Okay.
But it's a huge space in there that is only at about 50% capacity rented right now. Putting in social distancing guidelines of only allowing no more than 4 people in the locker area at a time, locker room area at a time, and we're not opening the showers or the bathrooms that are in there. We're following DEEP's guidelines of not opening those right now because they don't have all the restrictions on how you need to clean them and all that. So rather than people carrying their chairs to the beach, if they have a locker, they could store them in their locker, grab them, and when they are allowed to use chairs again, they can use them. That's our hope, is that people will be able to eventually lounge on the beach again. I think that's coming soon, but again, not yet.
Okay. Thanks, Anthony.
You're welcome.
Representative McDermott. Mark, I think you're on mute.
Mark, these are the best questions you've ever asked me.
Okay, so we'll go to Representative Siebert while Mark works out his mic. Joe?
Yeah. Thanks, Madam Moderator. Excuse me, while I clear my throat. Hey, Anthony. Joe Siebert, District 5. Good to see you. I would have to say your new normal look is looking pretty good, so I think you should keep it.
I appreciate that.
So I know there's a lot of pent-up demand to play golf, me being one of those individuals. I'm looking really forward to teeing off on Saturday. I was just kind of curious if you have an early read between old normal and new normal about what you're seeing for residents signing up for golf passes, and what you're seeing for activity in the new normal to help generate revenue for the town via Smith.
Yep. Well, I appreciate the question, and I'm glad to hear that you're going to be out there on Saturday. The golf IDs themselves, I would say, are still lagging a little behind for our residents. However, the golf rounds and tee times themselves are off the charts. We are completely booked tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, and as funny as it is, almost Monday is almost completely booked out as well. So I think with the new normal, what we're seeing is more people are actually playing golf during the week as well. Our par 3 course, since it had opened up on May 1st, has been the hottest thing in town, essentially. There's so many people playing down there that I haven't seen down there in years that it's actually really good. And the comments and feedback that we're getting are, man, we should have played this course a lot sooner. So I think it was just a hidden gem that people were playing at Smith and they didn't really ever give par 3 a chance. And now that they're down there, it's a fun little course. So it's bringing in record numbers down there right now. I don't know that that'll stay now that Smith is open, but I hope the trend does.
Great. It's encouraging. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Parham.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Hear you loud and clear.
Hi, Cindy Parham, District 2. Hi, Anthony. I realize that a lot of teens and 20-somethings are going to have struggled to get jobs this summer, and I'm not sure if it's you or the health department or the Red Cross, but is there any way, because I have a feeling a lot of parents may be looking for childcare, and will there be a possibility of partnering with the health department or local pediatricians to provide like virtual first aid classes, which are typically required by many parents before anyone will watch their children? Is that something that would be under your wheelhouse or no?
I definitely think it's something between my department, Chief McCarthy at the fire department, and Sam Cleary's department that we could definitely partner together and start offering those classes. I think their expertise would be able to tell me, is it something we can do virtually, or is it something that has to be done in small groups where we're social distancing? But either way, I agree 100% with you. based on what we're seeing right now, childcare is essential. And I think a lot of people are going to be relying on babysitters this summer.
Okay, well, as a member of the Public Health and Safety Committee, I will certainly be happy to work with you in the fire department on that. So expect an email from me next week. Thanks.
Yep.
Representative McDermott, should we give you a try again?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes. Yay.
There you go. Somehow my speaker switched to my Beats pill, and that obviously doesn't have a microphone. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mark McDermott, District 7. Anthony, what I was saying is I miss coaching on Saturdays, the girls, and I hope we can get back in the fall for that soccer. It'll be my last year with the 8th graders, so I'm not sure where we are. I think we're talking about every one of your budgets right now, it seems. So,
Parks and Rec.
It's fine with me.
Your expense side seemed to go pretty much unscathed in the Board of Finance reduction. I just had questions concerning, in general, if you can look at, I guess, all of them, your compensation, your seasonal staff. Has that been cut, and by how much?
For all 6 of the budgets?
Yes.
No, it has not been cut. What you'll see a lot of in my departments was we had actually created for the first time this Marina budget. The Marina has never been separated out. That's 7090.
Yeah.
So where you end up seeing reductions in waterfront and some Penfield stuff, and you're going to see things that will correspond with the police budget when you get to them, and DPW will also have some things that were transferred into this Marina budget. So we tried to do our best with an estimate on that Marina budget to have a starting point. And this is where we ended with it. So I mean, we're at about 300. It's 2 something now that they cut 50,000 out of it. But for the most part, nothing was cut. It was transferred around.
I guess my question is, with some of these, Marina, I guess, is open now.
Yep.
The golf courses are open now. The beaches aren't open now. Are there going to be any cuts, or are we going to save any money on seasonal payroll?
No, not that I see. Not that I see. Our beaches will be staffed fully by lifeguards starting Memorial Day weekend. Our parking attendants started 25 days early this season, so there won't be any savings there. The Marina, as you know, is open. Not that there's any, there would have been any savings there. That's 24 hours a day, special police officers and attendants at the gate there. So no, I don't foresee anything because we are open.
So if the governor doesn't, well, are we planning on opening the beaches, or are we going to have lifeguards there looking at empty beaches?
So right now the beaches are open, and I've been
monitoring. They're not open for, people put down towels and hang out.
But the goal
Anthony,
would
can
be.
I jump in? Can I jump in?
You may. Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So the emergency management team, we're working right now on a plan to allow residents to utilize the beaches for more than just passive recreation. And we had been working on this plan, and it's taking a lot of planning to try to do it in a safe way. Anthony and I and the emergency management team were talking about, adding lifeguards and all of that, but that was before the cuts that came through from the Board of Finance. So we have to come back and reassess how we're going to do things with that amount of cuts. So I'm not sure how things are going to work out exactly. We still have quite a few planning meetings now in light of those cuts that came down.
I stand corrected.
Okay. And I guess my other question is, how are we protecting lifeguards? I mean, if they would say have to rescue somebody and give mouth to mouth, God forbid, I mean, are we having oxygen tanks down there? How are we doing this? It's
that's all still being discussed.
Question, then you can answer maybe.
Yeah, that's all still being discussed with the emergency management team.
Because I don't, you know, I'm of the opinion that I want to see people working that are getting paid. I want to see them working. And, you know, if we're not open for people to go swimming, to put down towels, to enjoy the beach or whatever other recreational activity is under your purview here, then these the seasonal payroll needs to be cut.
Understood.
And we don't vote until June 1st, so I guess it would be good to get a feel. Well, we'll know more by that time, whether we're open and running to capacity or if we're, you know, part of the way there. So we'll see. Thank you, man.
Yeah, I don't.
You can keep talking if you want. I just was not.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay. Representative Gale.
Thank you. I just have one short question. I, saw on Moms of Fairfield that there were some parents who were concerned. I noticed that everyone's camp got canceled, and now you're offering childcare as an option. But I believe people were extremely concerned that they were only going to be inside the kids and wanting, them to have some outdoor time. And I'm wondering if there's a budgetary constraint or what the issues are. Are you planning on allowing these kids who will be in the child care program to be outside?
Yes, we have to follow state guidelines, and the state guidelines recommend that you have your groups inside. In a classroom, no more than 10 kids in a classroom. They can't interact with any other groups outside of those 10 kids that are in their classroom. The kids that are in the classroom have to stay 6 feet apart, socially distanced, so they're not going to be playing checkers. They're not going to be playing tag or duck, duck, goose. They're going to have to do everything in these little, personal space areas. When they go outside, they can go outside, that's not a problem, but they can't be out there with another group that's also out there. So they wouldn't be able to play soccer or catch or anything where there's a shared, ball or, anything else that's shared. They can't be in the same hallways as another group. They can't be dropped off and pick up. They can't cross paths at drop off and pick up. So they have to have separate entrances. So as you can imagine, having separate entrances really limit the spaces that we can utilize. We don't know what spaces we're going to have. We don't know if we're going to be in the schools. We don't know if we're going to be in the town buildings. So once we have a little more clarification, the state's supposed to put some more guidelines out tomorrow. Once we have those, we'll be able to make some better decisions because we'll have better information. We have sent out a survey to all the parents that had kids that registered for camp this year. So far, about 300 or 350 or so parents have responded to that survey, and we have, a very good number of kids that absolutely need childcare is what their, the option their parents chose. So, in order to get people back to work based on the governor's May 20th order, there has to be childcare, and camp can't start, unfortunately, until June 29th based on governor's orders. So there's this gap right now that parents are going to have to figure out, but we also have to be able to, we want to be able to offer something for our residents starting June 29th. And obviously, I've been in the camp business over 15 years. This is the first time we've ever had to do something like this. So I didn't want my department to frame what we're going to offer to the residents as camp and mislead them, which is why we framed it as a child care option. So we're going to do our best to make it fun for the kids that are there. But again, I think the kids that are going to go to this child care option are kids that really have to be there. So we're going to try to make it the best we can for them. I mean, if whatever program we put out there, I want to be able to say, I'd be happy to send my kids there. Yeah. And that's the stamp of approval I would put on it. So.
Yeah. And you feel like you have enough in your budget to deal with all of these restrictions and all the things that you may have to...
It's self-supporting. So whatever fee, whatever the cost is going to be, we're going to divide that out, and there may be an increase in the fee for camp. I mean, right now we were looking at about $275 for 2 weeks, which ends up being $4 and something cents an hour for the 60 hours of childcare that they would get. I mean, that's far cheaper than it would be for a babysitter.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
There are several other people with questions. I just wanted to pipe in first and say that we should probably, there's so many questions for Parks and Rec in terms of the pandemic, but we should probably make sure we're tailoring it to the budget, to the revenue or expenditures, because we do have a lot of other people to talk to tonight. The next person was Representative Vergara.
Yes, hi, sorry, I was slow with that, Jill Vergara. So I'm just a little confused. I put points of clarification because I'm confused about how we're talking about different staff members and whether it's fiscal year 20 or fiscal year 21. So we're talking about lifeguards now. Isn't that a fiscal year 20 issue?
That would be, correct.
Okay, and then the parking attendants now, that's a FY 20 issue.
Yep,
okay.
Same thing.
But the budget with the seasonal payroll, that's an FY 21 issue.
That's correct.
After July, and FY 21 begins July 1.
Correct.
Okay. I think it would be helpful to get a list of the seasonal payroll for each of the departments, like for Penfield and for Park and Rec and Waterfront, if there are any. I just would really like to see what the seasonal payroll is doing for FY 21. I understand there's issues going on for FY 20, but but that's so separate pots. Thanks
Do you
so
have
much.
the text version of? Do you have the text version of the budget?
Yes, I can't tell what the seasonal payroll does and how. I can't tell what they do.
Out.
I can't tell who's a party attendant, who's a parking attendant, who's a maintenance staff.
I'm not gonna. I just don't know what you're asking for.
Like in that line item for Penfield, for instance, in 51070, and it says seasonal payroll, and the total is $56,700. I wanted to see.
Right, but so my question, and again, I just don't know what documents you guys have. Do you guys have the text document that shows maintenance 2,200 hours at $12 an hour for $26,400? Locker attendant, 1,150 hours at $12 an hour for $13,800, and parking attendant at 1,375 hours at $12 an hour for $16,500. Because I mean, it is broken out.
I don't have the per hour thing. Maybe I'm not seeing it. Does anybody else have the per hour information?
I don't think so. I don't have it. Would you mind sending that, Anthony?
I'm sure finance.
Excuse me, Anthony, if I could jump in, it's Linda Gardner. I just want to make the RTM aware, and I think we made you aware of it early on, that report is on the website under handouts. It's a report that explained as the text or the detail, and it provides that for every single department, and it references what Anthony just spoke to.
Oh, Linda, thank you so much. Where is that located?
It's on the town's website under the 21 budget under the handouts.
Okay.
Okay.
And there's various reports. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anything else, Jill? You're all set? Representative Pastilli?
Sharon Pastilli, District 3. Through you, Madam Moderator, I have a question or a point of clarification for the First Selectwoman. So I was just wondering, Anthony mentioned that there were no cuts to the Parks and Rec budget, but the First Selectwoman mentioned that the Board of Finance cuts are affecting the ability to open the beaches. So I was just wondering, is there actually a cut to the to the Parks and Rec budget? I didn't think there was a cut.
Are you asking me that question?
Yeah.
Well, there was cuts. I mean, the beaches are also required. DPW is there, emptying garbages. There's a lot of things the town does. So we have to come back. We just had this meeting, and there's a lot of meetings we have to discuss how we're going to do things, in addition to what Anthony was explaining earlier regarding the additional work that's involved to put together, or try to put together programs that meet the guidelines. So there's a lot of balls in the air right now.
My understanding was that neither Public Works nor Parks and Rec were cut by the Board of Finance.
All the departments were cut.
There was a cut to Parks and Recreation. It's on the cut sheet that you were sent out.
Yep.
There were two sheets, cuts and control, and specifically in Parks and Rec, the education and membership was cut.
Was that the 3-column spreadsheet with the yellow fields on it, the yellow stripes on it?
I think the yellow. I think it turned out yellow for you. Yeah.
That was a $1,000 cut, I believe, right?
Correct.
So how does a $1,000 cut to education and membership stop our ability to open the beaches?
I think the bigger point was...
Go ahead, Anthony.
I think the bigger point is that Public Works is cut. All the maintenance of the beaches comes out of the Public Works budget, not any of the Parks and Rec budget. So maintaining the beaches would be our biggest thing. And if DPW can't do that, or they have to allocate funds somewhere else, and I can't speak to Brian Carey's budget, they'd have to make those decisions, or the administration would have to talk that through and figure out where the best spots to save are. And if that's the maintenance of the beach, then that's what they decide. But it would be the Public Works budget.
Oh, okay. So I just wasn't sure if it was... Okay, I didn't think that Public Works had gotten cut, so I'll go back and check that. Thanks.
I think they got cut 11% or something. I apologize. I don't want to spread false information. I know that he took some big cuts.
Okay, thanks.
Representative Iacono?
Pam Iacono, District 8. I'm sorry. I need to follow up on Representative Pastilli. I'm completely lost. Can someone get us an explanation as to what was cut that we won't have? I'm not seeing the correlation between what was cut in DPW specifically. Is Mrs. Gardner there?
Hi, I'm here.
Hi. So if I'm looking at Public Works on the adjustments, so there was a cut to capital, right? There was a cut to fleet maintenance, and there was a moving from asphalt paving to bonding. I'm apologize. I'm just not following how this is related to the Parks and Rec department.
That is the extent of the cuts in that particular department. You are correct. And I was getting lost in the conversation there because I wasn't
Thank you.
understanding myself. Thank you. Okay. I'll be glad to listen.
Wait a minute. Mrs. Iacono, I would just further add that, typically we have these conversations about hiring seasonals. I know I'm new at this, but meeting with the departments through the planning stages, this is really where I guess the town starts to prepare to hire seasonals. And apparently we hire a lot of seasonals for DPW, we hire seasonals for Park and Rec, there's different departments that utilize them. And Mr. Carey was asking me the other day, and I told him, they were really pushing me, DPW was pushing me to ask about it because they need it. There's a lot of things that are, you know, out there that need to get done, and I said, you know, let's just hold off because I'm not sure how we're gonna shake this out, how we're gonna be able to do it. So there's a lot of discussions that are gonna have to be, had. Obviously, we've been at a lot of budget meetings, so there hasn't been time, and we're working on the town government fully, so that's been taking an extraordinary amount of, my administration's time as well as, the department heads. So we just haven't gotten to that piece yet.
Okay, that's related to seasonal, but there was no, was there a reduction to DPW for seasonal?
No,
I don't see that anywhere. I think maybe I think somewhere maybe, wait, well, pardon me. I think maybe, Madam First Selectwoman, I think maybe somewhere the conversation got, there was some kind of cross. I'm not really sure, but I maybe, could you put something together that explains that? Because I'm confused. I think, I don't know if we're all talking about the same things anymore. Because it's not making sense to me looking at these sheets.
Together, but after I sit down with the department, again, you know, this is my first term, I'm 6 months in, but I'm assuming that when you're facing a $7 million cut to the town, there's gonna be some decisions that are gonna have to be made. Things are gonna have to change. It's $7 million. I think it's the biggest cut the town ever had.
I know, but respectfully, Madam First Selectwoman, there's nothing in any of the line items that was reduced that are correlating to what we're asking about, so I'm uncertain what other changes you would have to make because the Board of Finance actually makes line-by-line reductions, so it's just not correlating unless you're telling me that there's going to be expenses beyond this and you're going to have to cut other things in order to get some stuff. So there's a line-by-line correlation as to what happened at the Board of Finance meeting, and it's not meshing with the line of questioning that we're talking about because it doesn't make any sense that there was no cut to DPW that is affecting a lifeguard. So it's not meshing. I think maybe something got confused.
It could have potentially, and again, we haven't had a chance to sit down and digest this yet because it just happened on Monday. So we have a lot of work still to do, and that's all I'm saying, on a lot of fronts.
Okay. All right. So I think maybe what you were trying to say is that you're still looking at all the seasonal stuff, and these lines, I think maybe there was just confusion because these lines aren't related to the seasonal, but you might need to be looking at seasonal going forward. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think maybe that's where you were going with that.
Yeah, part of it, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Pastilli, did you want to just comment on something on that?
Yes, thank you, Sharon Pastilli,
Okay. District
3. So I just wanted to confirm then, Madam Moderator, through you to Madam First Selectwoman and Mr. Calabrese. So currently, no cuts were made by the Board of Finance that would affect the opening of the beaches. So no cuts were made to Board of Finance in DPW or in Parks and Rec that would affect the opening of the beaches right now. Is that the case?
I believe I said that we're dealing with COVID, which requires a lot of additional planning and social distancing and cleaning and a whole host of things. So we're working toward a lot of different things. We're trying to figure out things. What I was trying to express is that our town has received an extraordinary cut, and the departments are telling me that we have to sit down and work these things out together, and we haven't yet done that because it happened on Monday night.
Okay, but the Board of Finance didn't make those cuts is the point, though.
Board of Finance made $7 million worth of cuts to the town.
Right, but not to the line items we're talking about at this moment, I don't think. Right, is that the case?
Good.
I guess that's it.
I'll send a follow-up question in writing because I don't think I quite got an answer, but that's okay. We can clarify in writing. It's kind of hard to operate on Zoom, so it'd be easier for all in the room together. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Representative Grauer.
Yeah, Rick Brower, District 9. I've got a question for Anthony. He stated that you can't use the bathrooms or the showers in the locker room. You can't put chairs on the beach. And you're going to have a full complement of lifeguards for people that want to go into the water, but they can't come out of the water and sit in a chair or on a towel or a blanket on the beach. Do we really need all the lifeguards? Are we really going to have that many swimmers?
I think the first select woman had addressed this already. She said we're going to have these conversations. And I will leave it at that for the time being.
Okay. But we have to be logical here. You know, when you come out of the water, sometimes you want to just sit on the beach.
I guess I would just ask as moderator, and we'll probably put this in writing, if we do have a little over 2 weeks before we actually have to vote on the budget, and hopefully by then there will be more concrete understandings of how this will be handled, and you know, revenue changes and income changes that may affect this. So it sounds like we'll have to, you know, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, things will get ironed out, and we'll ask you folks for further questions. I'm just trying to see if anybody else, okay, does anyone else have any questions for Anthony? We didn't specifically get to the marina and the other items, but I think we were all sort of talking about this generally. Does anyone have any other questions for Anthony? The golf courses, I think, were covered. Okay. Thank you very much, Anthony, for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good night.
You too.
Okay. So we're moving now to the retiree, OPEB and pension. H&H and Mr. Egan and Mr. Baldwin.
Madam Moderator, this is Patrick Egan. I could start with the insurance and the workers' comp sections.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Moderator. Majority Leader Vergara and Minority Leader Iacono and board members. Just for a brief overview and this is page 88, insurance and claims. The overall budget section there is reduced. There was a reduction also, which now makes it a overall reduction in the risk management fund claims from the $900,000 to $700,000, and the workers' comp section on page 89 had an overall reduction of 7.78%. There is a budgeted increase for line 58930, which is the heart and hypertension section, of approximately 12.4%. So I would be certainly happy to answer any questions that anybody has regarding those lines.
Thank you. I think we jumped, I didn't realize this, but we jumped over OPEB and pension. I wonder if we could go back to that. Do we have anyone from H&H here?
Madam Moderator, can we just finish if there's anything from Mr. Egan? Do you mind? I mean, he just opened up his thing. And then go back to H&H? Can we just finish the Egan conversation?
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Egan is listed as part of the OPEB discussion, so I'm assuming he's going to stay on for that.
Yep,
That's
sorry
okay.
about that. Didn't know that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not aware that I would be handling OPEB, as that's not really my wheelhouse as risk manager. I apologize.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I believe that was going to be handled by, I think it was Hooker and Holcomb, or somebody was coming in to talk about
Yes,
those items?
yeah, your name was just on this, but is Hooker and Holcomb on the call? Anybody from there?
Yes. This is Stefan Shakurna.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. So if we, sorry to be jumping around. So if Mr. Egan is not involved in that, we'll put you on hold for a minute and continue with Mr. Egan so that he can head home, and we'll come back to OPEB and pension. So, Mr. Egan, you were presenting about workers' comp and insurance, I believe?
So overall, I just finished up with the heart and hypertension that there was 12.4% increase in that line.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So overall, if anybody has any questions regarding our insurance and claims, workers' comp, or H&H, that's heart and hypertension, I'd be happy to, at the pleasure of the board, answer any.
Okay. Representative Pistilli?
Hi, Sharon Pistilli, District 3. I just had a question on what the town's risk management strategy is going to be going forward, and if we are anticipating any workers' comp claims related to C-19, and you know what the latest and greatest is on that, because this may change because of that situation, right?
Sure. I mean, we haven't really had a whole lot on that end. We're not getting too far into the weeds on, I guess, how claims work with communicable diseases. Obviously, we certainly want to give confidence to our employees, especially our public safety folks who are out there every day and who have great exposure, and balance that too with making sure that the town isn't taking on liabilities that aren't. There's been a fairly good process in place. If they thought there was an exposure and quarantining folks, there is an arrangement with one, if not both, of the universities. I know the police department has been using I think it's a local hotel or motel for their officers if there was an issue. But so far, we're actually moving along pretty well without really great exposure immediately.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think it's been handled very well, so thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And I'm sorry, I did it again on mute. Mr. Egan, are there any other questions for Mr. Egan on these issues? Mr. Egan, I believe your budget numbers 1320 and 1330, is that right? Active employee benefits and workers' comp and insurance.
Yeah, yes, it's 1330 is is those budget lines for insurance and workers' comp. I think 1320 is for the benefits line for I believe that's the medical line, which I believe the Director of Human Resources is here for that one.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. And then Human Resources Administration is the Director of Human Resources. So, Mr. Hasselkamp, are you on the call? Is the Director of Human Resources on the call? I think I see
sorry,
you.
I couldn't figure. I'm on. I couldn't figure out how to unmute something. So, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great.
Welcome
Sorry
to
about
the
that.
town. You are. Am I correct that you're the new Director of Human Resources for the town?
I am. I had probably the worst timing possible of changing jobs, but that's the way it goes sometimes. So.
Well, welcome to Fairfield.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. So we're going through the human resources section here, and I understand you might be responsible for item 1320, active employee benefits, which for the purposes of the RTM is on page 82 of our budget book. Is that something you can address?
I can, in a sense that I've participated with the Aon is our consultant, who's our healthcare consultant. They develop the numbers associated with the budget, and one of the reasons you saw a reduction, I believe, of a little over 400,000 from the original submission was that Aon updated their claims review, and they were able to reduce that amount so that the net out of the Board of Finance is 407,000 or something around that reduction. For those folks that are new, we're fully self-insured. So what that means is Aon takes, all the claims, all the costs associated with the administration, and what's called stop-loss insurance, which is really budget protection, really, for the shock claims, which would be large claims. And they do an analysis for the town, which projects what they expect that we'll be spending in the next fiscal year. And that's the number they've come up with for next year. I believe it's roughly 5% increase, thereabouts. So that's sort of what we, I can talk to you about the health insurance, and I can certainly probably answer questions relative to that if anybody has any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on these points? Okay, so we'll move on then, if we may, to Human Resources Administration.
And yes, so the interesting thing about when I logged on and listened to the library presentation is the thing that you mentioned about having staff reductions associated with payroll administration is really the primary change in my budget. There is an increase, which I'm trying to find because I can't find the thing right now, that's associated with the town's going out to bid for a time collection system. And that's really the only, in some sense, change in the budget relative to year over year. There's a line item associated with the purchase of the software and something like what's called Kronos or some kind of time collection system, which would automate the current process, which is a data entry exercise for all the departments into our Munis system. So that's the primary change in my budget from at least last year.
Do you see a cost savings in using the new system, the Kronos system? Or
it's usually not a cost savings as much as to me, it's not really about cost savings as much as it is about accountability. I think that's sort of, from my perspective, the biggest weakness that I've noticed in the town is lack of systems that would create an accountability for certain aspects of personnel administration. So this is just one aspect that would certainly assist in making more accountability to the counting of time in the town, really. So it certainly gets rid of the data entry. It doesn't get rid of necessarily the processing. People will eventually either, use biometric clocks or some kind of clock mechanism that then gathers time and then gets reviewed by usually timekeepers and then ultimately approved by a supervisor, and then that would get sent over to the Munis system. So that's sort of in a thumbnail what the new system would do.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on this item? I don't see any in our chat. Would you be willing to then address the unemployment compensation line 3150, which is on page 167 of our budget book? Anything you'd like to
number, and I can
share with us?
I think.
3150 is the budget line that helps.
Yeah, so I think, I forgot what and I apologize, but I'm trying to find it. Is it 350,000 that we increased it to?
I think so. I'm trying to find it too in my book.
Yeah. So I'll speak conceptually to it. So, there's little doubt. Yeah, so you probably understood, have heard at this point that we laid off probably between three quarters of the part-timers that are on the town's payroll. And we did that about 3 weeks ago now, I guess. There's an issue about whether there will or won't be rehiring of the seasonals that needs to be, I don't say seasonals, they're permanent part-timers going forward. So at the time that the number was generated, there was an expectation that there was certainly going to be some increase in the unemployment. Frankly, that's a best guess as to what's going to happen. It's the best we can project. There's not any sort of easy way to do that, not knowing at the time we made decisions about the part-timers, whether we would or wouldn't be bringing them back, whether we'll bring partially some of them back. So the assessment was that we need to increase the amount based upon the likelihood that there'll be more unemployment than not. So that's the best explanation I can give you at this point onto that number.
Mm-hmm.
So just one of the pieces they have some information. The way the current unemployment law has just gotten passed, there will be some reimbursement back to the town, which has been factored into, I think, Caitlin gave you some numbers. There will be some reimbursement back to the town for a certain period of time to the extent that the unemployment can be directly correlated to the current pandemic. The federal government is still trying to figure out how that's going to happen, but that was, I think, taken into account when we gave the projected savings associated with the layoffs of the part-timers.
I see. Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the HR director? I don't think so. So thank you very much for coming and speaking with us tonight. It's nice to meet you virtually. Great. Thanks very much. Have a nice night.
Just, do you have contingency on tonight? I don't know if I'm supposed to stay for contingency. I did for the Board of Finance, but I don't know if that's... Oh, okay. Sure, we could do contingency now then. That's okay. We'll do that, and then we'll go back to OPEB. It's actually not, I just hung on because there was some questions. It's really, I didn't set up the contingency. Some of it was related to issues about negotiations, which we were in executive session discussing. So I'm not sure that whether I need to, I can't speak directly to the contingency number, but I certainly can hang around if there's questions about it. I think that was put together by Mr. Brummer. Okay. Or for the finance department.
Madam Moderator, that's generally the finance department.
Yeah, I would think so. Okay. So I think you're good to go, Mr. Hesselkamp. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Representative Iacona.
Okay, pleasure meeting you.
So thanks. Same here. Thanks. Okay, so we're going to go back to OPEB. Is there someone from H&H here today?
Yes. This is Stefan Shakurda.
Hi, can you just introduce yourself?
Stefan Shakurda from H&H.
Oh, okay. And for the public and the members of the RTM, can you explain what H&H does and how it relates to the pension?
Yes, we're hired as the actuary for the plan, so we basically value the liabilities that the plan has to have, and we determine what their actual determined employer contribution will be to fund the pension plan as well as the OPEB plans. So we're providing data. We take that data and use that and come up with the contribution that the town needs to make to continue to fund the plan. so they can pay benefits.
Can you turn up, are you able to speak closer to your mic, or it's a little hard for folks to hear you?
I turned it up. Is that better?
That is better. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. So Representative Pastilli, you have a question?
Would you like me to repeat that, what I say?
Oh, yeah, that would be good, if you don't mind. If you could repeat your name and where you're from. Yep.
Stefan Chakurta from Hooker and Holcomb. We are the actuaries for the pension and OPEB plans. What we do is we help the town manage their liabilities. We measure the liabilities and help them determine what their employer contribution is to each plan to continue to fund the plans. That way, when benefits become due, they have the money set aside to pay those benefits. Still can't hear it all.
Okay. Yeah, apparently people are still having trouble. So maybe talk right into your phone, or.
Yeah, all right.
Is that better?
Oh, much better. That's great.
Okay. Well,
Thank
they
you
usually
so
say
much.
don't use
Yeah.
speakerphone, so that's fine.
I know.
Okay, so do that again one more time?
One more time, yes.
Okay. Again, Stefan Chakurta from Hooker and Holcomb. We are the pension plan and the OPEB plan actuary. We determine the liabilities for the plan, and which ultimately will determine what the employer contribution is to fund the pension and OPEB plans. That way, so when people retire or have benefits due, the fund has set aside the money to pay those benefits.
Okay. Thank you very much. Representative Pastilli, you had a question?
Hi, Stefan. It's Sharon Pastilli, RTM District 3. So I have listened to the Board of Finance meetings, and I've read through the minutes from the Pension Board meeting on February 26th. And then I listened to the Board of Finance meeting from April 21st.
Okay.
And then the subsequent meeting, which was, I think, the 27th. And I had some 26. Yeah. Okay. So I had some questions.
Okay.
And I hope you don't mind. What I'd like to do for the sake of the people listening, I happen to work in compensation. I don't have a ton of experience in pension, but I find that, explaining things to people in simple terms makes it easier for them to understand. And with pensions, it makes it hard for the average person to understand how valuation works, right? So, so I just wanted to run through my understanding and then just ask for some clarification, because the budget changed at the last minute, and so this is why the background questions that I'm asking do flow through to why the last minute changes had to be made this week for the Board of Finance. So I'm just asking for your patience.
Yep.
So in reading through all of the meeting minutes and listening to the Board of Finance meetings, starting with the February 26th meeting with the Pension Board, they met and voted on new mortality tables. And so to explain this to people who might not have an HR background, the HR, so just correct me if I'm wrong. I'll go ahead and explain it. So you use a mortality table to figure out how long the people in your plan are going to live, because that's the amount that you need to save in order to pay the liability for their earned benefits.
Yes.
So, and the mortality table is a really important input into that model, because it predicts how long your retirees are going to live, and then therefore how much the town will owe to cover that earned benefit.
How long it's going to take them to pay those benefits for, yes.
Yeah, how long they need to pay the benefits, because that's how long the person will need them, right?
Yep.
So my understanding is that at the February 26th meeting, there was an in-depth discussion about the new mortality rate tables that had become available within the last year or so, that indicated these are the newest and best tables, and they have an indication that the public sector retirees tend to live longer in retirement than we had originally planned for using the prior methodology.
Correct. And the prior tables had a smattering of public sector people in there, but they also had a lot of private sector, and more so on the private sector because they were based on Social Security tables as well as CDC tables. Then the new study came out where they just focused on participants working in the public sector, and they divvied it up into three categories. One being the general employees, one being public safety, and the third being teachers and administrators. And when they did this study, they found that those people tended to live slightly longer than the other table, than the larger population in whole, with teachers living the longest of any group.
So then it became necessary for us to, from the pension board's point of view, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but according to the minutes, it seems here that it was important to be able to implement this mortality table because it was the newest and best, and that the effect on the town budget, estimated by you, would be possibly $1 to $1.5 million this year.
It would be $1.8 million.
Okay, and that will run into the future. That's just this year's liability.
Yeah, basically, changes in new mortality will be a step up of another $1.8 million each year, roughly.
Right. Okay. And so the reason why that goes into the future is because our liability goes into the future for the amount of time that we owe these employees their earned benefits. And then the potential positive, negative effects to the town credit rating. So if the pension board decided not to implement these new mortality tables, this is something that is looked at when we're rated.
It would be one of several things they look at.
Yes, but it is a fact. It's a factor. So that's why the pension board felt they had to implement it. That was the gist of it, right?
Yeah, that was one of the things when in that conversation I said it may not, you may not get pressure today, but in another year, within a year or so, you're going to get pressure probably from your auditors, as well as it's going to start becoming more of a factor when you go out for credit ratings.
And
I don't know for a fact. Oh, go ahead.
No, and so my other understanding was that Fairfield is probably at the median in terms of the speed at which we've implemented these new mortality tables, and if we were late to the game, that might hurt us, right? So we want to be kind of in the middle of the pack in terms of when we
that's more of a philosophy the town would take. I mentioned that from what we've been seeing, it's been about a 50-50 split of who adopts it and who doesn't. A lot of some of the bigger ones tend to delay it a little bit. A lot of the smaller ones, because it's not as big of an impact to their budget, that they tend to be earlier adopters. But again, every town's different because it matters of their financial position at that time when it comes up. So, for instance, a lot of towns, you guys do an evaluation every year, so you're a little different. A lot of towns do it every other year, biennially. So therefore, they wouldn't reckon most of them, next valuation cycle will be this coming July 1st of 2020. So that's when a lot of those will first hit. But the ones we have already done valuations for, it's been about a 50-50 split of who adopts it and who does not.
Got it. Okay. Okay, so that's it. I wanted to make sure that I understood what was covered there. And then just to be clear,
there was other things covered there as well.
Okay.
That we talked about in there as well, because every year we bring up a bunch of different assumptions that they would want to look at or should look at.
Right, and so the reason why, so just for everybody who doesn't have, like an HR tech background, the reason why all these inputs and these models are important is because it's the only thing that we have to predict what our liability is going to be, and it's the only way that we have to budget for it. So the pension board's fiduciary responsibility is to make sure that the inputs to this model is accurate so that we know how much to budget for in the future. It's only their job to do this prediction, not their job to decide how it's funded. And then I just wanted to confirm, H&H, your client is the pension board, correct? So you're paid by the pension board?
That's not, well, I wouldn't have known that before all this came about. That's what I was told. Because the way I look at it, we've always sent our bills to the finance director, but then I guess they get paid through the pension trust. So if that's not, if they're the manager of the pension trust, then we would be employed by the pension board. I did not know that fully back when we had that meeting in the pension board.
Mhm. Okay. So you,
Because
so at
it's
the
never
time,
really come up.
but you're paid from the assets of the pension, right? The pension board.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So then
there are certain assets. There are certain funds that can't be paid out of pension plan assets, and that would be when we do the disclosure reports, and those are required by GASB, and you cannot, because those are more for the employer. You have to pay them out of you can't pay them out of plan assets, but they have to be out of general assets.
Yep.
So in a sense, I guess I would be hired by both.
But for this particular exercise on February 26th, you are being hired by the pension board to provide actuarial services, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. And so my other understanding is that the pension board, like their number one priority is obviously to fund the liability, but then, you know, as they make decisions, they also have to make sure that, you know, there's no side effect of a negative impact on our, you know, on our credit rating. So I want to move on to, I just wanted to note on March 9th, 2020, so even though there were materials that were discussed at the pension board, in the minutes of the Board of Selectmen meeting, I just wanted to note, this is just a comment, that the full report was not available yet for the Board of Selectmen to review. And then I'm looking at the April 21st, that deck that you has the executive summary on it that you had presented to the Board of Finance.
Yep.
And I listened to that meeting, and I had taken notes. I didn't get a chance to go back and listen to it again, but I did take notes on it. And in that meeting, I didn't hear. I noticed that the numbers that are in this report, like they tie back to the pension liability before the new mortality table was implemented. Is that correct?
Yes.
So that
no,
means
they have
that,
both sets of numbers are in there.
but not in the executive summary. The executive summary's only got the one with the old numbers in it.
Yeah. Hang on, I'm just trying to see what the executive summary shows.
On page 11.
Yeah, no, I've got it up, but I don't see the executive summary. Let me just see one. I don't see a page labeled that.
It's in the little, the page numbers are in the little green boxes on the bottom, and at the top, it says, page.
So that's the contribution summary. That's the contribution summary. And it's based on no changes. That's page 11. On page 12 and 13, and we had discussed this, I showed the before any changes and with the new mortality table.
Right, but the executive summary, but so here's the thing. On February 26th, the pension board voted to adopt the new mortality table, which increases the town's liability, which we have to budget for, right? And then in advising our Board of Finance on April 21st, the executive summary only has the old table. We aren't operating on that old table anymore. We're using the new mortality table.
I don't call it, that's a contribution summary of the same scenario from last year to this year. And then the next two pages, like I said, has with no changes as well as the new mortality table. And that was discussed, and I said there was different options that they had.
Right, but
you
said that there were different options that they had, but you didn't, I didn't hear you.
How they would implement the mortality table.
But the pension board had already implemented.
Point of order, Madam Moderator, I'm sorry. We don't have any input on the pension number. I understand people might want to understand it, but it's 9:51. Can we get to a question that's related to the budget?
Well, Madam Moderator, I'm just concerned because we ended up at the last minute under budgeting by 1.8 million because we weren't using the right mortality table that was sent in front of the Board of Finance. I'm trying to understand why that happened. Could you answer that, perhaps? Just clarify why? I just don't understand. I'm trying to follow the numbers through, and I couldn't figure out where they tie out.
At that meeting, they said they wanted to adopt the table. And then when we talked again, it was giving them options of when they would adopt it. Do they want to adopt everything day one? Do they want to phase that in? Do they want to spread the impact of adopting that table over more than 1 year? And those were the options that was presented to the Finance Board.
Okay.
And even on the page before that, the last bullet point of the contribution summary says your ADEC can range between 10.12 to 13.45 based on which assumptions they wanted to choose ultimately to settle on.
Okay, and did you go back and did you let the pension board know that too, that you were giving the Board of Finance these options after the pension board had voted on the new mortality tables? Did you tell the pension board that?
I don't have direct contact with the pension board.
You don't? But they hired you on February 26th, right?
They had me present to them numbers.
But you do the actuarial work for them?
Correct.
So you weren't in contact with them to let them know that the Board of Finance was considering something that wasn't using the right mortality tables that they'd already voted on?
I don't know what they were ultimately going to decide at the finance board.
Okay, and who else gave you input on using the old mortality tables instead of the new ones in the 421 report to the Board of Finance?
Well, we always start with whatever we used last year, and then we move on if there's other assumption changes, because there is always an improvement scale every year that we recognize in the mortality tables as well, and that was recognized as well.
But I didn't remember, like when I listened to the Board of Finance meeting, I didn't hear you bring up the fact that the pension board had approved the new mortality table.
I never explicitly stated that. I did not know if I needed to say that.
Madam Moderator, please, when we agreed to, Madam Moderator, point of order, when we typically in the past, we have gotten an overview from the board, from the CFO on the pension stuff, debt service, and the numbers that the RTM does not have any control over. I understand there are questions, but can we please, if there's the discussion into this level of detail, could we perhaps set up another meeting for the representatives with Hooker and Holcomb? Because it's 9:54, and we just don't have control over these numbers. They're given to us, and we have to adjust to them.
Well, that's true, but this was an exceptional situation. But Representative Pistilli, we do need to wrap up.
That's fine.
And let other people talk.
I just would like to know where the input came from to use the old mortality tables instead of the new mortality table numbers in this 421 report. I just don't understand where the breakdown in communication came from February 26th.
Both numbers were in there. Both numbers were stated to the finance board. I didn't explicitly state this is what they elected. I said this is what the new mortality is going to do to your budget.
Representative Pistilli, I think we do need to maybe have them come back to another meeting.
Yeah, sure.
Just because there is a lot still to do.
All right, I'm very detail oriented, so I appreciate your patience with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Chrissy Kelly, you had a question?
I did. I just had a quick one. Chrissy Kelly, District 9. I too have a background in pension actuarial, that world, that exciting world, and many moons ago. And I know that while we're all focused on the mortality tables, which is a very important thing to focus on because it does significantly affect the valuation of the program, equally as important is the discount rate that is being used. Those are arguably the two most important variables, unless things have changed in the 20 some odd years that I've been doing this. So my question is more, not that I don't care about mortality tables, they are what they are, and we should be using it. If that represents our population, then so be it. I'm wondering, I apologize because I didn't do my due diligence and look at all the minutes about the pension board and how it was discussed that we decide, and trust me, I'm not looking for a larger pension liability here, but I'm just wondering what the rationale was and what, if any, concern there was along the way from the pension board on the 7% rate that we are currently using with the new mortality table, seeing as last year when it was gangbusters in the market, what did we squeak out, 5.2, 5.7? So how,
Correct.
especially given everything that has happened now, are we comfortable? I know it's over the lifetime of this, so you kind of have to flatten things out, but 7%, I'm not I just need a little more comfort behind that level. I know I can't change it, but I just need a little more comfort.
Again, so you go back to the pension board, they're the ones who dictate what rate I use. And we do several things. So I do present to them what the impact is going to be for every eighth of a, reduction in the discount rate. So what's that, 12.5 basis points, all the way down to 6.5%. And we also look at their capital market assumptions, and I mentioned to them that they are probably a little high at 7%. What they really need to do is figure out what their ultimate goal is, where they want to settle at. Is it 6.75? Is it 6.5? Based on the capital market assumptions in our report, we show them that, they're probably looking at it based on their asset allocation and their mix is more at a 6.25 or so rate. And they knew that. And what came out of that meeting is, we really don't want to change our discount rate at this time because we are in the process of switching asset managers from Callan down over to Vanguard. So they said, we'll look at the mortality table since they both have an impact on the credit rating. So that's where they more went towards the mortality table. I don't know if that's in the minutes or not about the discount rate discussion that we had, but that was both discussions were probably had equal weighting. But they felt more strongly towards the mortality because of the switch in the investment managers. They didn't know how they were, because they were talking about being reallocated their asset portfolio. So that's kind of how that came. But we did talk about that, and I said it's a $600,000 increase to the ADEC for every eighth of a point.
Right.
So if they went down
it's not
50 basis points, if they went down 50 basis points, it said it would essentially be a $2.4 million increase in their ADEC.
Right. Right, and that is my only concern, is that we're going to be having this conversation next year, and is based on our higher assumption of 7%, which
as you're probably aware, we're going to have the conversation more than just the discount rate at this point in time if things continue the way they are, just because the drop in the value of assets. So that to me, that's going to be the bigger focus. Really what that market does, because that's going to have a bigger impact in the mortality table, without a doubt, and that's going to linger on for several years.
Point I was trying to make, this is not a one-time hit, because it does affect, and at the end of the day, we can discuss back and forth and cross-examine who knew what, when, and why the last minute hit. But at the end of the day,
and that's why by the time we got to the finance meeting, we pushed forward some options for the mortality table implementation, knowing that this is going to be a tough year for the budget year. And even without changing the mortality table, they were already reducing the budget by over, by 1.3 million between the OPEB and the pension plan.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify, and
I guess if we really look at the big picture, I think, however it comes up, what the finance board came up with a number of what they're, without any changes, the budgeted number was 19.8 million. What they ultimately ended up doing was doing 1.3 million less than that in total. So now, essentially what adopting the mortality table did was shift funding the OPEB plan, which is very, very moderately funded, and move it to the pension plan, because funding the pension plan with the new mortality table is going to give them more bang for the buck than funding the OPEB plan.
No,
so I think that's
I
kind of how
everything,
I think they settled on one number and adjusted downwards, regardless of adopting the table or not, because they weren't going to make what was budgeting.
Okay,
I don't know if that's true or not. That was my impression of probably what was going to happen, and what ultimately did happen. And because we had even regardless of the mortality table, we had conversations before they even knew really focus on that they weren't going to be able to fully fund both those plans at this time based on the current conditions.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Vergara.
A question?
Representative Vergara, did you have a question? I don't know if we lost her. She asked to ask a question. Let's see, Representative Georgiadis. Well, her phone died, yeah. So, Representative Georgiadis, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I had asked for a question prior to Vergara and Kelly. So I just had a question. So I just want a couple of clarifications. You're hired by the pension board, and no matter where the check comes, you went to that meeting in February, and but you've been talking a lot about the Board of Finance, but you don't work for them. You work for either the pension board or the town, because you said the town pays a certain quantity of your check. So I'm just curious, you just provide the information, right? And then the various boards, the independent board. Can I just finish my question, please? The independent board, the pension board is equal to the Board of Finance. They're all equal. They're all boards. So you provide the information. I'm familiar with what an actuary does, and then they decide as a town and their bodies how they're going to allocate the funds that are available during that budget cycle. Correct?
Correct. That's my knowledge. And I think one of the things that came out of this
and
exercise...
No, wait, I just have one more question. No, sir. So, and you have no responsibility? No, and you said you didn't give the information from your one client to your other client, right? So you didn't give the information that the pension board voted unanimously to your other client, the town, because you don't feel that's your responsibility? That's why you didn't give information about that vote, which I know two members of the Board of Selectmen on the Board of Finance, on the pension board, and Caitlin Bossie's on the pension board. So you felt you didn't need to give that information because they were represented?
Yes, I didn't specifically state, as you said, that they voted that, because I heard several different things after that meeting, which I don't know about.
But they're your client.
The interactions.
They're your client.
Correct.
But the pension board is your client.
Correct. That came out after the fact. I didn't know that at the time.
Well, you should. But thank you.
We send a bill to the town, and then I get paid.
Madam Moderator, we're having a trial here. Can we please go back to just the number and where we're going? And if people want to talk to Hooker and Holcomb in detail, can we please arrange for another meeting?
Yeah, this does relate to the number, but I know that it's a long conversation, but it does relate to the number. Representative Vergara, you have a comment.
Yeah. Oh, man. What is this, soft to yell at him?
Oh, somebody needs to mute. And Jill Vergara, are you on?
Yes.
Okay. Now you're muted.
Karen,
now you're not muted.
Can you hear me?
I can. Now I can hear you.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
And I hate to belabor this, but I do have a few more questions. I did want to ask Stephen, I watched the Board of Finance meeting like some others, and it stuck out to me that you skipped page 12 with the new mortality table when you were talking to the board. And when you were responding, when you were responding to Jim Walsh, you said that the new mortality table hadn't been adopted, and I really am trying to understand what happened, why you had no recollection of the pension board voting
I know what the pension board, they voted to adopt it. Now the question becomes, I think it's whether it was going to be adopted for that budget cycle, or they were going to implement it over a period of time.
But
because that's one thing that we never really fully discussed at the pension board.
I watched the meeting, and you made it seem as though this table had not even been discussed by the pension board. Certainly not voted on. Okay. Well, I have a couple of other questions for other people who were involved in the pension issue. I wanted to see if I could ask Caitlin some questions.
Sure.
Okay. Caitlin, you were at the vote, right? You were at the pension board vote. You voted for the new mortality table?
I voted to adopt the new mortality table in the pension and OPEB plans, yes.
Okay, and that was at the end of February. And then when the Board of Selectmen voted on pension numbers that were basically incorrect, it didn't incorporate the new figures and the new liability. You didn't correct the Board of Selectmen and tell them that it didn't go in line with the new mortality table?
So as Stefan kind of stated, we were looking at what the implication was of adopting this table. Do we phase it in? Does it need to be now? I think it was a question of timing as to when we were going to do it. There was a belief that if we adopt it for the 6/30/20 valuation plan, that affects the fiscal 22 budget year. So there was, then Stefan and I, and we discussed, okay, now that they've...
But that's like a funding issue, Caitlin. That's a funding. We have control over the funding, but the board making the decision to fund needs to have all of the information, the data. That was the pension board's responsibility. That was their fiduciary duty to provide the correct number. And that's what they did when they voted for the new mortality table. The Board of Selectmen was within their right if they did not want to fund it. And if they did, if they wanted to possibly fund it over a longer period of time. But what you're saying is a little different than that. You're saying that you weren't giving them the accurate information when they were making the determination how to fund it.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we were looking at the implication of one of the assumptions changing and the valuation going forward. So it was a question of timing. Stefan and I, we spoke, okay, now how do we go forward now that we're going to implement this at some point in time? We decided an experience study was a good first step. As in the past, every 4 to 5 years, we do an experience study to see how our experience study lines up with these new mortality tables. So we were looking at possibly doing an experience study first. Then we could look at phasing in the impact of this new mortality table as well. So it was really just a question of timing of this
I
table.
just really don't understand, because it just seems like you overrode what the pension board decided, and they have full reign over these numbers. The number is the number. You just have to put that into the budget book, and then we decide how you fund it. I would have, if the Board of Selectmen wanted to fund it, over a longer period, that's fine. Or if they wanted to push it off, that's their prerogative. But the public, everyone needs to see what the real number is at the time that we have that information. I don't understand why you wouldn't put that in the budget book or correct
Madam
people
Moderator,
when they're...
Madam Moderator, this is Attorney Jim Baldwin. Can I add a comment that might help explain the timing of this, speaking of timing?
Sure.
The fact of the matter is that the vote by the pension board was not properly noticed, and furthermore, that the pension board had not given notice to anyone in the administration about the impending vote in the middle of a budget season, in the middle of the budget cycle. It was not properly noticed, and therefore, it was my opinion, for very good reasons, that something like that, with such weighted importance, $1.8 million, a decision like that, needs to be vetted and fully discussed and presented to the boards, and that it should be properly noticed and voted on and addressed. And so that's what happened. So technically speaking,
Mr.
at the time,
Baldwin, when did you first become aware of this problem? When did you first become aware of this FOIA problem?
At the time of the February 26th meeting.
That's not what I have heard from members of the pension board. I have heard that you asked about the meeting at the end of March. Is that not true? You didn't know about this at the end of March?
I don't know when I heard. I heard about the vote, and I heard about it causing a huge problem in the budget process. And when I looked into the matter, I saw that it was not properly noticed, which helps explain why it came as such a surprise to everybody involved. It came as a huge surprise to the administration. It came as a huge surprise to the Board of Finance, and of course, it came as a surprise to RTM.
Caitlin was there in February. There was plenty of time to rectify the number for the Board of Selectmen.
If I did some.
Isn't the first select woman a member of the pension board?
She is. And one of the reasons why you need to properly notice. One of the reasons why you need to properly notice something which is going to be voted on is to apprise members and the public of what's going to be decided. That clearly didn't happen here. And I'm confident.
Okay, point of order, Madam Moderator.
Yeah.
I hate to be a broken record, as intriguing as this is. We don't have any purview over this number other than what is in it. So can we please somehow get to whether or not we should have the 1.8 in or out and what the deal is, please?
Well, we do have I think we do have a responsibility to understand, to know that the numbers we look at in the budget book that we're given, you know, where they came from and why they're there. And if we find out that some of the numbers were based on a lack of information that we all should have had, in my view, that's important. But I also know that it's getting late. So I'll ask that Representative Vergara try to wrap it up. And then Georgiana.
I'm just still so confused about how even what you're saying that there was some kind of FOIA violation, there was an omission to the Board of Finance. The Board of Finance was voting on this stuff. Even if you didn't think that their vote was completely whole, they tried to make an official vote. If you didn't think that it was valid, that's almost a separate issue. You are their counsel as town attorney for the Board of Finance. You were in that meeting for the Board of Finance. You were there when they were discussing it, and you didn't tell them that the pension board had voted on a new mortality table.
You're talking about the vote?
Yes,
Sorry,
I'm talking
about
about the Board of Finance meeting and the pension board vote, and that they clearly intended to change this mortality table.
Well, I'm not here to address what was presented to the Board of Finance.
It was omitted. Yes, you were in the room. It was omitted to them when they were analyzing this and figuring out what to do for the town. I don't even understand how this happened.
I think you're making assumptions that aren't there. If you listen to the presentation by Stefan, I can't pronounce your last name, but I really don't see how this is germane to the budget, which is before you. But I'm happy to just have this discussion. As suggested, I'm happy to have this discussion further at another time, but I'm not sure this is the time.
Madam Moderator, I just want to jump in. It's Brenda. I think there's a lot of sort of confusion about this whole thing, and you know, this came to my attention yesterday regarding people's sort of concerns or thought processes about some things. Here's how I see it. There was a vote, and yes, I am a member of the pension board. I attended my first pension board meeting. I don't remember when the first one was. And I was never onboarded correctly by the chairman, Mr. Vahey. There's supposed to be some kind of, I don't know, to teach me some things, and I get the agendas, and obviously this was a week before the Board of Selectmen was voting on the budget. So we had had all our hearings. The budget was done, hearings, printed, the whole thing. And I saw the agenda come up in my email. There was some reviews of past pension funds, and there was nothing on there regarding a vote of any kind. So I didn't attend it because I was really busy with the budget, and I was attending all these meetings. I had the fill pile. I didn't go. Caitlin said to me the next day they voted to accept mortality tables. Okay? So the pension board voted to accept mortality tables, which they did.
So you knew right after the meeting.
Now, the town then has to decide what it does. So she and Mr. Bremer contacted the Board of Finance chairman and shared that information with him. And then they spoke, I guess Stefan must have come in the next day, and they sat down, and Caitlin has some emails that they shared together. regarding what the process typically is for a town to do experience studies, which is a new word for me. I never heard of it, but it's called experience studies and some other sort of things you do whenever you're going to accept something like that, and then the town would have to go through that process and then make those decisions based on information that this actuary said we should do as a town. So they were in the process of doing that. We're voting on our budget. This hadn't been accepted by the town. My understanding, according to the finance department, this has never happened in the history of our town.
I'm going to just jump in, Mrs.
Regarding something like this before a budget is passed. So I think there was a lot of happenings, and of course our finance director was terminated. This was Caitlin's first, I think, week as the finance director, interim finance director. So I think there may be some
I'm going to take Representative Iacono's suggestion, and I think we should.
Ms. Wackerman, just one, if you allow me. I think there's some confusion about a pension board voting to accept a mortality table and how a town then decides to fund it. And to be clear, the Board of Finance chairman was notified about it, but there was no actions by the town or anyone to make decisions to fund it. As Ms. Bossi suggested, there had to be research and experience studies, and she believed, according to the information she received from Hooker and Holcomb, that this was going to be something accepted in July, and that would impact the 2022 budget cycle. So I think there was some misunderstanding by members of how that was working, and frankly, I was misunderstanding it myself. That's all.
Thank you. I think that I'm going to cut off conversation on this and just ask the gentleman from Hooker and Holcomb if he could come back another time when we can schedule a meeting and focus on this rather than mixing it in with the budget. So I thank you very much for coming, and I know it was a long time, but I think it was important to many of us.
Okay.
So hopefully we can ask you to, thank you, and hopefully we can ask you to come back in another meeting and talk some more to us.
Okay.
So thank you for your time. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
You too. So we're going to turn now to the legal budget. I'm going to recuse myself. My firm does some legal work for the town, so I'm going to pass this to Mr. McDermott, the deputy moderator.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Legal services is 1270. It starts on page 78. And Mr. Baldwin, Attorney Baldwin, you will be up. Hopefully it'll be shorter than the last session here. I think you're muted, Jim.
Sorry.
There you go.
Seems to be the thing to do.
Yes.
I think that you'll see the budget has been increased from this year's 435 up to 585, and I think that's pretty easily explained by the fact that the former HR director was paid an additional $50,000 to perform legal services, and that has now been put back into the legal budget, and the other $100,000 represents the anticipated cost of the revaluation and tax appeals that will follow based on historical precedent, based on what's happened in the past. And that's my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, well, that follows the notes I have in my budget book. So thank you, Mr. Baldwin. Are there any questions from the RTM members? Representative Vergara?
Yes, thanks. Yes, thank you. Jill Vergara, District 7. Hi, Jim. How are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you, Jill?
Good. I just have some basic questions about the town attorney and how you're hired and how you're paid, because I never really understood how it works. So you're hired by the first select woman and you have a contract with the town.
I do not have a contract with the town. I'm an officer of the town. By charter, I'm appointed by the first select woman, and I serve at her pleasure. And it's pursuant to Section 9 of the charter. You'll see my roles.
Are you paid hourly rates?
I am paid hourly, and according to the charter, it's set by the, I believe, the Board of Selectmen, and I have adopted the same hourly rate as my predecessor.
Okay, and if there's any additional work, it's farmed out to other law firms?
If there's other work that I feel should be handled by someone other than myself, yes. And that's always been the case, and it happens frequently.
Okay. And how do we determine which firms to go with?
Well, I am technically head of the legal department, so it is really something that I am supposed to use my best judgment in as to what firm or attorney is best suited to handle it. And if it comes to a matter of a long-term relationship or litigation, then the Board of Selectmen has purview over the direction of whatever particular case at hand there is.
Okay, thank you. And so I didn't understand one reference that kept coming up about a rookie mistake. What was that rookie mistake that the Board of Finance kept referencing? I didn't understand what it was.
That was the fact that I think my original request out of my budget was at $485,000, and that was not taking into consideration the tax appeals associated with this coming reval.
Okay, got it.
That's why my department request was increased by that amount.
Okay. And even though you're appointed by the first select woman, you owe fiduciary duties to all town bodies.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much for answering my questions.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I guess, Mr. Baldwin, you're good to go unless you have something else to discuss with us. And I'll invite Moderator Wackerman back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative McDermott.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Baldwin. So our next item is the contingency line, budget item 2010, and it's on page 101. Mr. Bremer and Ms. Gardner?
Yes.
Maybe for our new members, you could just very briefly explain what the contingency line is.
Okay. The contingency is an account that typically has anywhere between 300,000 or about that number for normal contingency. And what that means is something unexpected and unknown at this time that comes up that needs to be funded. An extra primary, a large piece of equipment that needs replacing. We just funded the new garage for the Board of Education when they had to move out of the Julian building, and we picked that up in contingency. So that piece is pretty stable year to year. There's a secondary piece, and I hesitate to get into the details, but I will just tell you it's the contract wage reserve for open contracts, contracts that have not been settled, and what we expect our liability for those contracts might be in a given year. The Board of Finance...
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to tell you, the Board of Finance reduced that account to all but the normal contingency for emergencies.
300,000.
There's 300,000 remaining in that account.
And what was the reason for the request for the much larger amount?
Well, it was a contract reserve for several open contracts that have not settled.
Okay. Are there, I can't tell if this is new. Representative Vergara, do you have a question, or was that from our previous? Does anyone have any questions? I can't tell if Representative Vergara does.
Previous presentation.
I think it is. Okay. Are there any questions about contingency from anybody? Seeing none, then I'll thank you. I know you guys will speak to us in a few minutes, but I want to just flip to public safety now. So thank you, and we'll be back to you shortly. So if we could first do the fire department, which is item 4010 on page 171. Is Chief McCarthy or Deputy Chief Dunn, are you folks here? What'd you say? Nobody? Anybody from the fire department here? Perhaps not. So we'll go to police.
We are. The fire department is here.
Wait a minute, we're here.
Oh, okay, great. Great, hi. I was
Okay,
worried
can you
that
hear
you're... Yes, we can. Thank you for coming.
Chief Dennis McCarthy and Deputy Chief Karen Dunn.
Thank you, and I just want to thank you for everything you've been doing in the face of this pandemic. I know you've been very busy and have done a wonderful job for us, so thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like to just go very briefly over your budget and give us any comments you have?
Sure. First, in relationship to the community response to COVID-19, the fire department, as you point out, has been very busy, and it has been a team approach. We're fortunate to have some significantly talented personnel who have been through a number of emergencies, including the standard emergencies that we respond to, but in particular Hurricane Irene and Hurricane Sandy, Superstorm Sandy, that certainly gave background. I was in a command meeting, and we're talking about some of the challenges that we've had with COVID-19. And I said, I'll just take out the municipal guide to pandemic response. And everybody looked and said, there's a guide? Well, clearly there's not a guide. And we've been fortunate to have some very smart people throughout the department and across all of the departments that have helped steer the ship as we work under the leadership of the first select woman and the command team in emergency management. So with that, let me just dive right into the budget. The budget increase includes two transfers from the ECC budget. There is $36,600 that was in ECC that is now in the fire department budget. If you take those, if you subtract those out, the remaining increase is a 1.92% increase over last year. The main drivers of that increase are the 2% contractual wage increase that is in our labor agreement, and we're able to come underneath. That it represents 93% of our operating budget. So the remaining $1 million of our $14 million budget handles all of the operations. We're able to reduce that even with the increase in salaries to come in at 1.92.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the fire department? Okay, I guess not. Thank you so much for your time and for everything you're doing, Chief.
Thank you.
We really
do have
appreciate
an emergency management. We do have emergency management budget as well.
That's right. You're covering that too. Okay, let's do
Yep.
that. For the RTM, that is on page 187. Oh, sorry, that's not right. I apologize. That's not the right one.
Yep, it's on 192.
Thank you.
And the increase here was, so the only increase in this budget, or the main driver of the increase, is again a transfer of a fee that used to exist in emergency communications that was shifted over to emergency management with the merger of our ECC with Westport Police and Fire. So account number 55301 is CMed Communications. It was 0 in fiscal year 20. It has increased by $70,356 in fiscal year 21, but there is a corresponding reduction in the ECC budget to reflect that. So it's a zero-sum game.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions about this? I see none. Thank you so much for your time and for waiting till this late hour. Thank you, and thanks for everything you do.
Thank you.
Be well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
night.
Chief Liddy, good night. Thanks. Chief Liddy, are you here?
Chief Liddy's here. I want to make sure you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Just give us your, sure. Want to just give us your comments on the budget and anything you'd like us to know?
Sure, brief overview. Preparation for this coming year's budget was done to reflect the same levels of service that we provided this current year. Currently, our budget reflects a 0.84% increase, and there's really only two drivers that exist. The first driver being a contractual 2% raise scheduled for July. And just like fire department, the ECC consolidation project resulted in transfers of approximately $207,000 from ECC to police, and those are a dollar for dollar match. So you will see that same reduction in ECC. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the police department on their budget? I think not. So thank you so much, Chief Liddy. Oh, you do? Representative
I figured I'd come in quick instead of typing.
Okay.
How are you, Chief Liddy?
Very good, thank you, Jed.
I'm glad you're safe and healthy. This is my question, I guess, every budget year. I worry about you guys and your police cars. So are you guys okay with keeping up with how many cars you need? And Matt, usually you ask for a certain amount of cars, but with the budget and the way things are, maybe you're getting less cars this year. I'm not quite sure if you need them. Maybe how many you need.
So thank you for the question. We certainly suffered a significant reduction this year in cars. And it's very hard to predict what that's going to feel like, because this reduction will only be felt approximately a year and a half to 2 years from now. With that said, we understand we're in unusual times, and police department's willing to step up and do whatever we can to, just like all the departments, to try to soften the blow on this.
Thank you, Chief Liddy. Stay well.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions. So thank you so much, Chief Liddy. And thank you. Have a good evening, and thanks for your time and for everything you do.
You also. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Good night. Now we're turning to the fund balance, which is item 2020, page 103. Mr. Bremer and Ms. Gardner.
Want me to do it? Yes, the fund balance is, as stated, there is no change to the fund balance in the sense of we are not adding anything to the fund balance in the current budget. It is currently at around 11%, slightly below 11% for this year, and we anticipate it'll be almost at the exact same number for next year as well. Notwithstanding the fact that we're not putting any more money into it. The reason being that the budget has gotten smaller, so the percentage is able to be maintained. If there's any questions, happy to answer them.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? I think not. So thank you for that. You want to move on to debt service? This is item 10030 on page 277.
Caitlin will handle that.
Hi, Caitlin.
Thanks.
Like
Hi,
Karen
Caitlin.
said, hi.
I'm sorry, I had a question for
1003.
finance.
Okay, go ahead.
We're, you know what, we're going to get to finance, Jill, in a minute. We're doing debt service. We'll do finance in a minute.
Sorry about that.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Caitlin.
Okay, this budget lists out all of our debt that the town is obligated to pay in fiscal 21. It comes straight off what we refer to as the waterfall chart that they go over in the capital planning meeting every year, and that gets updated every time we have a debt issuance. So what it is, and I believe there's a handout up on the website as well, so to kind of make sure that they reconcile. So there's a debt, the waterfall chart is up on the website, like I said, and it lists out all of our outstanding debt and by interest and principal with clean water. So if you look at the budget, the first line is the just estimated cost to market. So every time we go out and do a bond issuance, it's about $100,000. The next subset of lines is the principal due on our bonds. And that premium amount comes from debt service. As you could see, it's a negative 718. So what happens is every time we issue debt, we get, we hope to get some premium, and we have to use it within 3 years. So that's a third of the premium that sits in the debt service fund. The next section is the interest that's due on all of our long-term debts. Then we also have our band pay downs, which are our one-year notes. And again, that's simply we issue bands 1 year and we pay it off the next year. The next subsection is the interest due on the bands. And the last section is the clean water loan that we have from the state, the principal and interest that's due on that. And again, it reconciles to the waterfall chart that is up on the website. In addition to, we did have $126,000 in savings from our refund that we just actually settled in May. So it actually, the department went down $126,000.
Okay, great. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So on the last piece of that is the use of debt service reserves. Originally in the budget was a $1.3 million use, and that was increased to $2.3 million by the Board of Finance. It was increased $1 million.
Okay. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on the debt service line? Okay, so I guess not. So let's move to finance, please. This is page 145.
Sorry, I had
3010.
one, Karen.
I know. I thought I'd let Caitlin do the presentation first.
Oh, I had one on fund balance, actually.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay.
And
I'm
I think
sorry.
I must have missed it. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just had a question about, so I've been really concerned about the revenue projections, and I know it's so difficult to predict. We're in an emergency. Everybody's feeling their way through this, but it seems like a big risk for the revenue to really pan out the way that we have set out in the budget. And if something doesn't, if the revenue doesn't meet our expectations, what does that come out of? Is it the fund balance that would come out of to make up for any faulty revenue projections?
So the difference between the revenue and the expense would come out of fund balance, yes. So if you had lower expenses to offset your lower revenue, then it would still be zero hit to the net. But if the revenue is less and the expenses are higher, then yes, because then that would be a negative hit to your fund balance.
Okay, because I know that Brenda's talked a lot about all the different tools available to towns to manage our budgets, and I agreed with her that we should use everything available to us. So at first I was open-minded to using fund balance, like some others, to manage our budget and try to keep costs lower. But knowing that there's so much risk involved with our revenue projections, and especially with Park and Rec, where I personally, and I feel weird saying this because I know I'm not an expert, but just from reading news and stuff, it just doesn't seem like these revenue projections are anywhere close to what we can expect to realize. So that's why I changed my mind and thought that this fund balance should be preserved to shoulder any of that risk. So I just wanted to put that out there, that it makes sense to me to not use that fund balance if we have so much risk on the revenue side. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Let's see, Representative Gale.
Hi, Hannah Gale from District 6. So I'm just not completely familiar with this. I'm learning. So I just have a question that maybe everyone else knows. So when you're saying the fund balance that's available, is that third of the total funds that are, that cycle out every 3 years?
Oh, no, that's a separate, that resides in our debt service fund, and that's a result of us issuing debt every year. The fund balance is, equates to undesignated surplus. So it's the favorability that we've taken in over the years.
Yeah.
And that's a good indicator for the rating agencies to say, are you guys in good financial shape? And we're just about at 11%, like we said. So we've really worked hard to grow it over the past, I'd say, 8 or 10 years or so. But that's what the fund balance means.
Okay, I'm sorry, and what is the figure that's in that fund right now?
In our fund balance, so we have, it's about 11%, and it's about $35 million. So it's a percentage of our expenditures is how it's calculated.
And you say it's been growing over years, so 5 years ago, what was the figure in,
Well, so I have a chart in front of me. Since fiscal 10, so we're coming up on 10 years ago, we went from 5%, and now we're about 11%.
So that is quite high, historically speaking.
That is, we really took a measured approach because we were on the low end of the spectrum for the AAA communities in our state. Okay. So we've been working really hard to increase that percentage every year.
Okay. And does anyone know offhand what the range is for the AAA? What is the general range for that fund balance percentage?
We have, every rating agency is different, but we have a bond advisor who we speak with every couple months or so, and that's what he does for a living. So he meets with all the rating agencies every time we issue debt. So 11% is we're in a comfortable range. Every rating agency has a different range, and it's just one metric of many that are looked at when they're rating us as a community. So there is no real cut and dry, X percent means, you know, you're not going to be AAA. They look at it as one indicator of many metrics to say, how is this community funded? How are they doing? Do they have plans? Do they have rainy day funds? How's management? How are they budgeting? So it's just one tool of many, but we're getting up there. I mean, we're happy with our 11%. The Board of Finance actually has a fund balance policy that the range, I think it's a 7 to 11% range, and then there's some flexibility over, I believe it's 10 or 11 as to what any surplus is, what they can do with that. So we're just about at the top of the range right now, and so that's where we are. But in fiscal 21, like we said, there's nothing budgeted to go there. But because the lower the denominator of this equation, our budget number on the expense side is lower. So we're hoping to still be at the 11% level.
Thank you so much. That was such a good explanation. I feel like I understand it now. I appreciate it.
Good.
It was a great explanation. Representative McDermott.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mark McDermott, District 7. Caitlin, just a question on debt service there. You said that the use of debt service reserve is now $2.3 million?
Correct.
So what is the total debt expense now then?
I'm sorry, what?
So the total debt expense on the bottom now is a different number then, correct?
Oh, so yes, do you have the cover sheet? Is it 23?
It says 24.8, so it's 23 now?
Yes, 23,894,303.
Thank you very much.
Plus the.
Okay, thank you. Can you move on to finance, please, Caitlin? Or I don't see any more questions on those other items. Thank you.
Okay, the finance budget is on page 147. Did we get it? As you can see, nothing has changed all that dramatically, except for our fees and professional services actually went down from last year to this year.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
Also, I believe there was a request.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, sorry.
I believe there was a request. There was a request that I sent out regarding the difference between Chief Fiscal Officer and Finance Director, and they are in fact the same position.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thanks for that. Anybody have any questions on the Finance Department's budget? Doesn't look like it. Okay, well, thank you so much to all of you, to everybody who's on the call.
Karen,
but especially,
I'm sorry,
yes.
I have a question for Caitlin.
Yep, go ahead.
Caitlin, I can't remember, was the grant writer under your budget?
It was, yes.
Oh, okay.
It was under the part-time line.
Okay. Yeah, I really wanted that to happen. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it's leaving money on the table, not having a grant writer here, especially with the CARES Act and everything that's going to come from COVID. We need to have a grant writer. So one question is, are you training people in the office to be able to apply for the CARES Act related issues?
We are right now, we have one employee dedicated to reimburse and to do all of the FEMA grant reimbursements, which has been a full-time job for the last couple weeks, coordinating all of the backup for every department and submitting it through the FEMA grant portal. She's actually been trained from FEMA through a webinar, and there's a whole portal and a host of detailed instructions of how exactly to upload all those documents to then subsequently get reimbursed by FEMA. And we're also looking into the CARES Act process as well. So it's been a, very time-consuming process.
Well, my second point was I don't know how many other people agree with me. It's not something I've polled or anything like that, but for me, myself, I really wanted a grant writer. I thought it made a lot of sense, and so I would consider an appeal, and I hope you consider that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Caitlin, thank you to you and your whole department for doing all that work in applying for the money from the government. I can imagine it's an enormous job. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you, Karen.
Representative Iacono? Sure. Representative Iacono?
Writer. I think that there is a lot of changes that are going to be happening in the finance department in terms of hiring, and it's going to be an opportunity to have to look at things, and we have people retiring and people moving around, and before we jump all on that, I would rather have someone come in and take a look at all of that stuff. I'm actually quite familiar with how that grant stuff works, and I'm fine with holding off.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much to the whole finance group for your presentation. We appreciate it. Sorry you had to wait till the very end of the evening, but thank you.
It's okay.
And that wraps up our budget hearings, folks. We will be meeting, we're not going to have our May 26th RTM meeting since the budget vote is the following week, May 1st. We're going to do the budget and also do some matters for a regular RTM meeting. So we will meet again then. And thank you all very much. We'll see you then. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Karen. You did a great
Bye-bye.
job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Awesome.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you, Karen.
Thank
We
you,
really
Karen.
appreciate all that you've done.
Thanks.
You all.
Thank you.
Everybody stay well.
Be well.